What's up, everybody? How you doing? Ladies and gentlemen, we're having a scuff start, as usual. Wouldn't be GMA without it, but we are here today with GMA number 53. We've got, of course, myself, Melderon, Dunedain, Kargoz, but an amazing, awesome special guest today. We've got John Staats, one of the man who built over 90% of the game that you're playing right now, whether the dungeons, the crypts, the dens, the mines, everything that you've been inside of and died in, probably in hardcore. This is a man who built it. So if you want to get angry at anybody, he's the man to get angry at.
Got the mic working again, guys.
What's up, John? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very good. How are you? By the way, I want to back away from that. I only built half of it, and the half that I built is the part that you don't have problems with. So that's it. Yeah.
The front of the mines, right? Yeah.
Yo, it's so good to have you here, man. Like we were saying before stream when we linked up with you a second ago.
Thanks for having me.
We are, I think, speaking on all of us in the chat right now, we're more starstruck with you being here, people like you and Kevin Jordan and these people than really, the biggest celebrities, man. Like this game has done so much for us, put a roof over a lot of our heads, provided us with so many just thousands of hours of joy and entertainment, and it's brought so many of us together. We're all really close friends now at this point, and that's thanks to you, man, and this beautiful world that you created with the Dream Team back in the day. So, we couldn't, be more appreciative and thankful for your time, man, and, just really excited to have you here, man. So let's start with a quick round of catch up, just the quick so we can get into John Staats' brain. How you doing, Melderon, Defcamp, all you guys?
Great, doing very well. Really looking forward to this discussion. John is always great to talk to. There's so much. It just amazes me how much information these guys have in their head and how talented they are. It's like the Beatles, Like I feel like the original WoW development team is like the only thing you compare it to is the Beatles. It's crazy, but they're great.
Yeah, I'm really super psyched. I've totally forgotten about all my computer issues that I've been having in the last couple of days. So I'm just really excited to have John here again. This is the fortunately for Melderon and I, we got to talk to John a while back, almost 2 years ago now, it seems like. But it's whenever you get a time like this to delve inside a developer's mind is kind of a really special moment. So I'm just really excited to be here.
Yeah, same here. I had a very busy week at school with COVID and stuff. But talks like this just make the week good. And actually, I remember reading the book you made, John, 2 years ago. That was the first real hype for vanilla. Well, actually, the announcement was the first real hype. But then, after the long wait, the book was like the first thing we really had. So that was awesome. So I'm really, really excited to talk to you now.
Well, it was completely coincidental that I wrote it. I actually started writing another book, a novel, and I enjoyed doing it. And I'm like, you know what? I have unfinished business first. Let me because here we are. I was 15 years after we started, World of Warcraft, and it took me a number of years to actually finish. And I just wanted to get the notes that I had compiled and spent years, writing. Like I couldn't write any more about post-WoW because I stopped taking notes. It's amazing how much, even me, I've been through it. I've forgotten everything that, other than what's in the book. Everything after Vanilla War, I don't have notes for, so I completely forgot. So I'm glad I did get the book polished and, in a presentable form with just ironing out all the facts and the timelines. The chronology was nuts, and it was a very hard book to write, but I'm glad it's done.
So are we, and it's amazing that you even had the foreknowledge to take notes and do all that kind of stuff, because a lot of people, he talked to some people, and Kevin last week was like, man, I wish I wrote down a lot of this stuff back in the day, because I'm sure Blizzard of today could learn a lot from what you guys did back then. So at least it kind of created almost like a guideline for I think a lot of developers, and just the insight that you give into the game, and little things when you're running through a dungeon and you see the way that it makes you feel, the immersion that it gives you is amazing, and I think WoW does it so well, and a lot of that is thanks to you, John. So
right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So maybe we should.
Well, on behalf of everybody who worked on it, it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole team behind. For present and past team too, they are super appreciative of all the acknowledgments that the fans and content creators like yourself put together for the project.
Absolutely.
So I was going to just real quick. I have his book up in front of me on the old iPad here, and I know most of you are probably familiar with John Staats at this point. I mean, this book, I've been reading it all morning, guys. It is so good. I honestly was sleeping on it and I am right after this probably just gonna finish it and just read the whole thing. But I just wanted to read the first part of it because some of you who don't know who he is, this might help you. So John Staats was born and raised in Akron, Ohio. He earned a BFA from Kent State University's Visual Communication Design program and spent 10 years in advertising in New York City. I'm from New York City, so that's awesome to me. Before joining Blizzard, he had decades of amateur-level design experience, from tabletop games to first-person shooters. His homepage, whenitsready.com, marks the progress on his various projects, including an upcoming board game based on dungeon crawls. John built 90% of Vanilla WoW's non-instanced caves, crypts, dens, mines, and hive tunnels. His Vanilla WoW portfolio includes, and let's get some hype in the chat when you guys hear this. This man portfolio includes Anchorage Temple, Black Fathom Deeps, Black Wing Lair, Black Rock Mountain. Can we get some hype in the chat? Black Rock Depths. I am not joking with you guys. The list keeps going. I'm not joking with you. Booty Frickin' Bay, Karazhan. I'm not even done yet. Lochmadon Dam, Lower Black Rock Spire, Molten Core, Razorfen Downs, Razorfen Crawl, Skolamance, The Slag Pit, Upper Black Rock Spire, Warsong Gulch, and most importantly, the Wailing Caverns. No, but I mean, I just had to do it. I just can't even believe it. Like, just even reading it, I'm kind of just.
You hear that list? God, it's like some of the most memorable moments that I had in this game were in those places.
People are saying all the best parts. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Like, so honestly, dungeons are where it's at, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's just say that Blackrock Depths. Wait, I'm totally confused. BRD, yeah, Blackrock Depths is like the best dungeon in the entirety of WoW. Just simple as that. Everything ever made in WoW. Yeah.
My favorite. Yeah, and it's funny we designed. We had people to paint textures, and dungeons were unique. And 3D, when you have a 3D environment wrapped around you, okay, we call those just the interiors. We call it, the dungeon department was the interior department. It was hard to write, to make concepts for that, because when you do a two-dimensional concept like a sketch, it's something that like this bottle or maybe the exterior, but it doesn't capture like even when you're looking at me right now, you see this wall and this wall. You don't know what the ceiling's doing. You don't know, and you don't know. It really doesn't do anything. So all that is also working without any concept sketches, and we had no idea what gameplay was. So like when you were joking about Wailing Caverns, like I had no idea what the gameplay was going to be like, and it takes such a lead time to make a 3D environment. We needed to work that much further ahead than the game design. We didn't know how big a party was going to be. We didn't know how much room combat was going to take, and we didn't know how long people wanted their dungeon crawls to be. We actually were like, there's a section in my book, the growing pains of the Wailing Caverns, is because section and section, they kept saying make it bigger. No, it needs to be bigger. There's no such thing as a dungeon that's too big. And this is, again, before anybody's play tested the game. And the premise was that we were basing all of our thoughts on EverQuest, where there weren't instanced dungeons. The dungeons had to be big enough to accommodate the server. So that dungeon had to be, because it was an instance.
Right.
So you had to accommodate how many groups were the Wailing Caverns, 4 or 5 at the same time with the respawn rate. So that was we just didn't understand that, instances are just really they make the dungeon much bigger because you're there by yourself. And we went for years developing gigantic dungeons. We didn't, and then we realized, oh yeah, people like they're real short. I think we went with the Scarlet Monastery, where there was just a different wing at a time.
Right.
It was a lot more efficient to do stuff that way. But yeah.
John, I remember you saying last time we talked to you that, I remember Kevin said this, and last time we talked, that they wanted to, the dungeons to get bigger and bigger. Was there a point you were like, I'm going to make the biggest dungeon just to piss these guys off? I'm going to just create this huge dungeon so they can't complain about it.
What do you think AQ40 is, Defcamp?
Yeah. Well, AQ40 had its own problems. That's my least favorite dungeon, by the way.
I want to get to you about when you're done. I want to talk to you about that. Yeah.
Sure. It was very, very painful. That was almost where I was just digging my heels and going, "Look, guys, the number of times that we revised it was probably, I would say, 6 times where the game designers said, this needs to be longer. And when they said bigger, they didn't actually say we need floor space. I thought they meant longer, like long tunnels. And so we kept designing ourselves into a corner with that one. And we invested so much time that we were hesitant to just scrap the whole thing and start over, which is what we had done with Karazhan twice.
Right. Wow.
The big dungeon, Karazhan, was actually going to be so much bigger than what you see. We had sections, Aaron Keller. It was going to be so big, Aaron Keller and I, we did it at the tail end of Vanilla WoW, Karazhan. That's actually when it got built. It was released much later, but we had sections for a flooded section where, because there's a river there, we were thinking, we haven't done anything with. I mean, the Black
Fathom Deeps
has some flooded stuff, and we didn't know that was a bad thing to actually incorporate next to water with dungeons. But we were going to have flooded rooms and let's see what happens. Is that going to and all the micro dungeons around that we chopped off at the end of the development cycle. We said, but there's too much content here. There's literally too much. We don't have enough little incentives for players to go into that. We had wine cellars. I had a bunch of crypts around Karazhan, and they got half finished.
John Staats stuff
And a lot of that stuff went in game, and all the hackers got through, and they saw some of my half done stuff, and it was kind of embarrassing. But who knows? It's but Karazhan was going to be much bigger. It was actually ends in a raid dungeon like that. You go to the top of Karazhan, there's that asteroid out in the center. I had an entire raid dungeon. It was like Molten Core, where you end the dungeon and there's the entrance to the raid. Okay.
Wow.
So at the top of Karazhan was supposed to be, and I actually fully meshed out this. It was too high concept. It was a asteroid, kind of like I don't know, a spacey, alien-ish type of Giger-ish type of design, but it was too weird, and it just didn't belong in the world. But yeah, we had bigger plans for Karazhan.
And it's amazing because Kara's like one of the, correct me if I'm wrong, but like almost could name 90% of the chat here. It's like their favorite, right? So it's my favorite dungeon, and and it was originally designed to be a dungeon, not a 10-man raid, correct?
It's sweet. Well, we didn't know. Yes, it was originally going to be a dungeon, but it was so big. Rob Pardo and Jeff Kaplan came to me, and they said they needed much bigger dungeons, and that's the last 3 rooms in BRD were just kind of tacked on at the end. The princess and the what's the room with the pillars? Oh, I hate that.
With the braziers.
Yeah. There's
braziers.
Well, the braziers. You're getting up past the Lyceum. The Lyceum.
Yes.
Yeah, that was all just. We just tacked it on. I was out of ideas. I was like, what? I'm just gonna put a bunch of pillars. It's gonna be, But every dungeon got bigger, and they said they wanted Karazhan to be the size of a lower Blackrock Spire and upper Blackrock Spire combined. And at the end of that, we're going to put a raid dungeon. And, you know, the library, at one point they said, okay, John, you know, we were halfway, the thing was more than halfway built and textured. When the game designers really got to an idea of what the raiders wanted and what the gamers wanted, and it wasn't gigantic dungeons. So at the very end of Vanilla WoW, maybe plus or minus a couple months, they're saying, you know, don't put those flooded sections. And then they'd say, we don't need the micro dungeons around. And then they said, can you make the library smaller? And we're like, we really can't, because those are, you know, unless you want just a giant spiral staircase that's going to get the players that high. So we kind of painted ourselves in the corner with that one too.
I'm sorry, really quick, I just wanted to ask, were you familiar when they revamped Kara and Legion? So they revamped it into an actual dungeon. And I think some of those assets that maybe weren't used were used there. I'm not 100% sure.
There's like spaceships up there now. There's like not spaceship. The burning Legion ships are up there now.
Right.
So you can get to the top of the tower.
And you actually do get transported to a spaceship at the end of Karazhan now.
Okay.
In Legion. Yeah. So I'm wondering if they saw what you originally had, if they still had it, or the ideas from what you had, and kind of worked with it from there. Because, you know, the fact that they went to a spaceship and all this kind of other stuff, I'm wondering if they were like, hey, you know, let's go continue with John's idea here and kind of...
Probably not. Developers tend... One of the funny things about game development is that everybody wants to work on their own ideas. And that's one of the things that no one's going to steal your ideas. Okay, is that everybody wants, because you're in a hyper creative environment, and when you can get programmer support and art support, you're usually going with the thing that's been you've been working on in your brain. So no, that's how stuff they made sure that it kind of doesn't feel out of place at the top of Karazhan. So that's and yeah, sure, they probably said, okay, what can we do with this space thing that was cut off and makes no sense at all at the top of
it does now.
Now it does. Like let's put some sense into it. And that's kind of like I read a good book about George Lucas and how he writes, and the books that I'm writing, he just comes up with ideas and then he sees how he can string it together. Okay, and that's how game development works. I kind of dispel that myth in my book on how lore actually happens. Metzen says he'll throw out his wish list and he'll see what people are jazzed up on, and if the under the sea technology and the concepts aren't really up to level 11, then he cuts out the Nadjatar was going to be one of our continents from Vanilla WoW, and we decided no, we don't need to do the what were the fish guys?
The Naga. What ended up being a zone in BFA as well, Don.
The Naga,
It's a zone in BFA now, by the way.
Right. And so they eventually, catches up with the. But yeah, it's you look and you see it's so hard to make games anyway. To actually really to be adherent to a story is very unrealistic.
So taking a few steps back here, John, I'm really curious about this. How do you see the whole story of World of Warcraft? You were part of the original team. And it just amazes me reading your book that you joined Blizzard, 2000 or 2001 or something?
2000.
I mean, that is just so many years even before the game launched. I mean, just high level, looking back on this whole chapter of your life, how do you see the story of World of Warcraft unfolding? I mean, to where it is today, or does anything come to mind when I say that question?
Do you mean about the development team, or how it's being made, or the lore? Because the lore has... I actually haven't played since Cataclysm, so it's been a long time. But I do see... I'll tell you how everything is developed. It's improvised. It's always improvised, because any long-term plans and any game designer that I know, unless you're soliciting investors, there's no point in doing game docs. Like for WoW, we never had a game doc for anything. That's one thing that Eric Dodds, Alan Adham, he basically taught Eric, this is how you make games, okay? And Eric Dodds went on to, Hearthstone and a whole bunch of minor little games like that. But making any long-term plans is so fruitless because you're going to see budget delay, budget problems, production problems, tech problems, art problems that it's just a waste. Like you do an outline form, but no, it's always improvisation. Yeah.
I think Kargoz was kind of getting at, do you think that, I guess this is the question that everyone wants to ask, but it feels bad asking. Do you feel like they've kind of lost their way a little bit, Blizzard, when it comes to game development? No? No,
it's harder. It gets, I will say, like, as hard as it is to make an MMO, we were joking about this in my podcast last night, that the numbers will inflate because you know how they crunch the numbers, like they cut the levels in half because they don't want science fiction-y numbers all the time. But the thing is that we started out, we knew they were going to get that bag. We knew that they were going to inflate to where it's just too much for a fantasy game. But you want to have, there's an expectation of progress. You have to have meaningful jumps in the numbers. And it's just part of the problem where you have the hardcore audience and you have the casual audience playing in the same space. And you will never, ever, like the Diablo team had this problem, you will never, ever make the game that's going to make both
100%.
happy for a long period of time. You can make them happy for a short while, but once they get into the rinse and repeat, then one side gives, and it is so much harder to make a MMO for the audience today that has rinsed and repeated 1,000 times. I would not want to be on that dev team. That is a difficult thing to do.
For sure.
And I felt sorry for them. I really do, and you're tougher because you're a more educated. Like we had just EverQuest, and that was. EverQuest and what was so our competition was the WoW team 2 right now is competing with all the fond memories of Legion and Burning Crusade and the Frozen Throne and Vanilla. They're competing with all of those idyllic situations where this audience loved this thing and this other audience they loved that thing later on. And one of them's the hardcore; they're way more vocal, and the casual audience they pay the bills.
Right. Interesting. What an elegant way of putting it. Actually,
it's really tough to do, and I'm sure they're the smartest developers out there. I mean, I really don't think that they've lost their way at all.
Really?
That's
okay.
Not at all.
really
There's
interesting.
something from this book that I picked up, and I've been desperately trying to scramble through my iPad to find it. I think people in the chat, type something in the chat if you're live right now, because I'm really curious.
Ask me.
You said something along the lines of public perception is always wrong. And, we do the show a lot, right? And we care about the game. We truly do. We wouldn't be talking about it all the time and playing it after all these years, if we didn't care about the game. But it's so easy to be negative and to, point out, oh, I can't believe Blizzard did this, right? Oh, stupid Blizzard. I can't believe they did that. God, like what dumbasses, they took out this or they put this in. And I've always... and another thing on your book, you said back in the day that Blizzard was very secretive about almost their policies. They were almost very distant from the player on purpose. And now, so that's I'm kind of scatterbrained here. So first, like your thoughts on sort of why public perception is always wrong and how it looks like from the inside, and then building on that. Well, let's start there. Sorry, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. That's why I wrote the book in the first place. My first day at Blizzard, I just myth after myth after myth. And I had developed first-person shooters for Quake, Quake 2, Quake 3, for 4.5 years, and I was working like crazy 80-hour weeks, and I was watching the plan updates from the developers from id Software, Raven, all the top developers, and just seeing how their thought process. I was more in, the level designers, but I thought I knew what was what. And then I saw how Blizzard does it and why they do it. And unless you're actually in the room, in the meeting, you don't know really what's going on. And I found, like, if someone was an animator, nice guy, smart person, he had a perception of the game designers being so ridiculously wrong about this thing. And he's on team 2, and he has no idea why the game designers are or why the programmers are doing something. It's unless you're actually getting up out of your seat and walking over and saying, "Hey, Sam, what are you working on today? Why are you doing that? Why do we need Lua for an interface? That doesn't make any sense." Unless you're actually asking those questions, you really, because it's game development, and just one aspect of game development is so complicated. And that's why the book was so hard to write, because there's so many facts that you have to straighten out and get the reasoning down. But I didn't understand why Blizzard did anything, and you need all of the pieces. And even if you're on Team 2, if you are a game developer, until you're talking first person to the person who's making that decision, you really don't know why they did that. I mean, I remember asking Mike Morheim, why did we why did we merge with Activision Blizzard? What's the reason? And he said it's really nothing changes. It's a stock swap. Basically, Blizzard was a super valuable property owned by Vivendi Universal at the time that they couldn't elevate. And because Vivendi Universal was a bundling of horrible, horrible companies, and underneath all that was this company, Blizzard, that was basically subsidizing the rest of this empire, okay? And if they sell Blizzard to Activision, in return, buying Activision, okay, they owned Activision Blizzard at the time. By selling them Blizzard, they can make Blizzard's earnings public. They make that stock, the Activision Blizzard stock, visible and open, so people know what they're investing in, and not just Vivendi Universal. Vivendi owns that stock, so that's good for them. So that's why they sold. And there's all kinds of theories about the Chinese having influence on Blizzard, and that's so not true as well. Tencent is called Tencent because they want to own 10%. They don't want control. The theory behind Tencent is they don't want control of the companies that they invest in. So unless you're talking to the CEO about this, I would never know, because this is not just public. This is long after the fact. They're not even owned by Vivendi anymore.
So it seems like you give Blizzard the benefit of the doubt with a lot of this stuff, and say they have really high quality folks in a room. They're making decisions at a high level, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. Honestly, it's so easy to put to criticize stuff, but until you're in that boardroom, you don't really know the thought process. I mean, everyone has their own personal gripes with the game, or feedback towards the game. Stuff like me personally, the art style has changed over time, right? And it's kind of become more cartoony and stylized for that direction. I've always wondered, why did they do that, man? Or things like that. But it's good to get basically a behind the curtains opinion on it. That stuff is really well thought out. Do you think they make data driven decisions when it comes to even the creative stuff, what direction artistically to take the game and things like that?
Probably not. Usually, I mean, it's artistically, it's so hard to motivate an artist anyway. I mean, the guys, they don't read their email. I mean, it's so hard to motivate a creative team. You have to find out what they're motivated to do. Like I told you about the Metzins, how he puts lore together, and he sees he has his ear low to the ground, and he's thinking, do the dungeon team, do they want to do this stuff? Are they stoked to do this? Back when Metzin was there, I don't know who's even their creative director now, but you find out what you can do, and then you move forward. Now, sometimes, yes, you do have the worst development is top down, where the director of something hands it to the leads, and those leads hand it to the department leads, and then it goes down to the worker bees, and they'll find out like, oh, I'm building a merry-go-round. Okay, But sometimes, there is some of that, especially in larger organizations. I don't know how big Team 2 is now. 300, maybe more people. I don't know.
Well, John, I got to be completely honest with you for a second. Well, let me ask you something first before I do this. Back when you were on the team, right? Was that happening a lot where people were asking each other? So from the art department to the lore department, where they were mingling, and like was a lot of people really jumping from different section to section and figure out what was going on?
Early on, only at the beginning. Right. Once a team gets larger, it becomes, well, you need more organizational people, and as it gets larger and larger, like when you see the end of the book is actually not fun to read. Because you will see the low morale, and I do talk about that. I tell why they're complaining, why there's money problems on a team. It becomes a drag when one department goes to lunch by themselves, and sometimes when the department, then they're not, but
connecting.
We made a lot of those decisions. Yeah, they're probably not able to, like, you can't just say, guys, let's go to lunch at a restaurant and see if they have 300 seats for us in Orange County. It's it's hard to do.
Right. My perception is, and I'm sure a lot of people have this perception, is that like back in the day, you guys were like rock stars. You guys were, and I'm not saying that they aren't today, but like you guys were like this close knit, smaller group that was very much on the same mindset, that people were very much on this connected wavelength. And I feel like, and I'm not alone on this, that over time, after well into Cataclysm and this and the other, it became much more of a well-oiled machine. We're going to do this. We're going to do it that way. We're going to have less connection. We're going to have, and like this is just my theory, and this is what I think. Over time, there was less cohesiveness between the groups at Blizzard, and I feel like over time there's been, and I don't want to say less passion or less, because I know that those guys are some of the most passionate people.
You're right.
It's just
you're right. Yeah. It's more orchestrated. Like people who play in an orchestra aren't indifferent to being the top, first chair on the violin. Mm-hmm. They're passionate in their own way, but they're not going into a garage and saying, "Hey guys, let's riff on this melody."
Yeah, exactly.
That's not how it is a different. They're achieving something different. They're not developing really anymore. They know how many people are going to be in a party.
Right.
So yes, it has, and I don't know if there's a way to go back to that.
Right. Because there was something magical there.
Well, there's also fan expectations. We were working without even announcing the game, and that was crucial to not have people comparing our work to something else. It is, I don't want to say it's less passionate, because that's kind of like a knock to everyone who's played in an orchestra. You know what I'm saying? It's a different thing. And and honestly, I'm also out of the loop, as I say in my book. Unless you're in the room, you really don't know. So I'm just pontificating here for the most part.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something about it. I think you said new WoW is like the hardcore audience WoW, and then old WoW. Is that right? Old WoW is like the casual audience.
No. Like whatever phase of WoW, you have a casual audience and you have a hardcore audience, and they're playing the same thing. That is the problem with making an MMO or any game, that there two groups of people are trying to digest the same content and having it meaningful for the casual players and having it meaningful for the hardcore players.
But did it went more into a hardcore direction than you think retail WoW?
I think they went both ways. I think they satisfied, at least, are we talking about vanilla WoW? Yeah, I mean, old WoW. Yeah, we definitely satisfied the casual audience. I mean, I remember right after when World of Warcraft was the shiny new thing, I went to a convention out on Long Island called the Icon, and the Icon was we had a World of Warcraft thing, and I asked a room full of people. There's about, I would say, maybe 200 people in the room. I said, how many people have, and this is maybe 6 months after the game is launched, how many people have a level 60 character? Who's raiding? Not a single person raised their hand. And these are guys at a science fiction convention going to a World of Warcraft out in the middle of Long Island. This is your average. So when I say the casual audience pays the bills, they really do pay the bill. You know, like you guys, like you're in that 0.5% of the end game raiders who are like it's a hard thing to make a game. With groups.
I think it changed a little bit now in Classic. If you would ask it now, I suppose many more people are level 16 raid. But I wanted to ask. So we have quite a big audience for Classic WoW, right? And I feel like Classic WoW and retail, they are basically different games. And I wonder what your thoughts are on. Is that should Blizzard make a game in the design philosophy of Classic again, or should they make new expansions more like Classic, or do you think it's better to go the way they did with retail?
It's kind of funny. Like every expansion is an attempt, and we're talking Burning Crusade. Okay, like let's just talk about what's coming out. Burning Crusade. That was just it's they're fixing so many things that were broken in Classic, and I don't know if Classic WoW had the crazy the druids were useless in raids for like they probably fixed that thing, but I mean and things like, oh my gosh, dungeon finders weren't working until, my God, was it Frozen Throne? That was the first time we actually got people just that's when Blizzard gave up with the fantasy of people meeting together and then walking into a dungeon, where they say, okay, we'll just press a button, we'll put you in a group with a dungeon that and we'll see. So honestly, I don't even, and what's funny is that some of these things, these new ideas that we introduced in Burning Crusade and Frozen Throne were mistakes. Like some of the things that we did were genuine mistakes where we realized, oh, that's so. I don't even know if it's even valid to say, oh yeah, it was a different thing. We were just, again, improvising, trying to fix the issues that 99% of the people are complaining about.
Yeah.
Like, you play any game, 99% of people are going, yeah, we need more dungeons. Well, if you make more dungeons, well, there's not enough loot for the dungeons. There's no reason to go into the dungeons. Like, well, you only have so many pieces that you can put on your character. You know, we can't give you 30 dungeons because there's only 15 pieces on your paper doll to give you. So it's that trajectory of learning. So again, I'm sure right now, Shadowlands is it's Shadowlands, right?
Yeah, Shadowlands.
Okay, yeah. For some reason that doesn't sound right. Shadowlands, I'm sure, is trying to fix what was broken.
Yeah.
Legion,
and
that's how it
was. That's fine.
Oh, BFA.
Don't worry, we all skipped it in our minds anyway.
I was in a podcast. We talked about Legion for all night. Sorry about that.
No.
BFA fans.
What you just said really resonated with me, though, John, because a lot of times, what happens is developers do something, they try something, and a lot of the times the fan base loves it, and a lot of times they hate it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And I feel like there has been a lot that's been done over these years, and Blizzard is constantly trying to do something different, do something new, do something different, do something new. And you know, and it's like, you know, yeah, Legion, there was a couple good things, there were some great things, and then BFA, we're going to try this, you know, this new system and do this and that and the other, and it's like, well, it's kind of like a lot of times it just ends up being like a recopy of an older system that people never liked in the first place. We're like, well, we're going to try to bring this back, and you got to give, like, in my mind, I got to be like, man, we got to cut these guys a break, because like they're trying, you know what I mean? They really are trying, and I see them, you know, trying to put in these new things and develop them. And I think a lot of it is like the evolution of where WoW went. But I do think that, like, looking back, you know, you like back in the day when you guys had a lot more of that. And I was wondering, is like, do you think it was you guys had almost upper hand, or a little bit, you know, because you guys had so much more freedom back then, right? There wasn't TBC or Wrath and all those other things. There was like, you know, 2 MMOs that were big, and you guys had a lot of freedom to imagine, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do something like this, we're going to do something like that. And now it's a lot of, you know, they're kind of like stuck in between this one rail system where they have this one direction to go, and they try to branch off here, there, and there, but they're trying to, you know, emulate things that happened in the past that they thought was good. So it's like you guys had a lot of freedom back then. I wonder if you think that added to the success.
The advantage that we had was really, and you'll see this in the book, like I'll say the beginning of my book is more fun to read, because all the new things, the shiny new things, are happening at the beginning of, like, oh, we have mounts now. People can actually ride on a mount, and you can control where the horse is taking you. Like, you don't get that at the very tail end of development. That's something, you know, when they say, oh, now we have different tails and different animation for the tails. We have our jumping animation. It becomes more incremental in the changes. And, you know, also new things break old content, because everything is connected. You have a big spider web. So the advantage is actually being at the beginning of the project. It's not just because we had more freedom. And, you know, the process is the same. The Blizzard process is keep what works and fix what doesn't work. And before World of Warcraft, we had awful MMOs. They were terrible. Dark Age of Camelot was probably the best of them out there, but there were things that were just so freaking broken that when you fix them, like, oh my God, that's the best thing ever. You know, the Team 2 right now has the things that they need to fix are one little thing in the sub genre that 20% of the population uses a lot, you know, and they're just so much like what really doesn't work. You know, what doesn't work about World of Warcraft is there's no game-breaking things like corpse retrieval, like like you used to die, you used to lose almost days of grinding. You'd lose levels, you'd lose experience. It was a painful thing to die. You know, fixing that, oh my God, people are happy with that. But if you fix gem cuttings, it's, you know, like gem crafting, you know, okay, yeah, that's good, that's better, you know. But they're not short of ideas too. I know that, again, like I said, everybody wants to work on their, you know, own ideas. I'm sure they're definitely not short of ideas, but the fact that everything is so connected and the game is so old and the audience is so much smarter, it's harder to make changes. It's a good point. Really harder to make change, because even if it's a good thing, what you can't do is make other content. You can't mothball other content. Like, say you have this interesting thing, a new way of traveling, okay? But if that just cancels all the other modes of travel, then you've actually reduced the dimension of the game, you know? So
I do have a question about, I guess it's more relevant to the game itself and what's going on right now in current. And you know, I've actually known this for a long time. Like we did a Def Talk about 2 years ago now, and first time we met each other. And I remember one of the things that really stuck in my mind was how much you didn't like AQ40. Now, I just want to, and I want to kind of understand why a little bit, but I just want to give you like a perspective of mine.
Sure.
That now that I've been in there more and more, we do it there every week. I just want to say that it has such a haunting, almost ambience to it. and I really enjoy it. I think
good.
maybe I just wanted to give you my perspective of how I think.
Oh,
it's,
I don't doubt.
yeah,
I don't doubt it's a popular place to be. But I actually have never played. I did AQ20. That was my raid. My raid group would do AQ20 because we didn't have 40 people. And honestly, it's because that's probably was that the last 40 person.
Next Ramus is the last 40 man raid.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
We did Matt. Oh boy, we did a lot of Nax. So I don't know why we didn't do AQ40, but what was I saying? Yeah, I don't doubt that it's people appreciate it and they have a good time. It's just as the development process,
Right.
like I just get sick of working on it.
Wasn't it one
is
of
it
the
because
first
of-
ones too? Also that you made AQ40.
So it was the first one. Yeah, I didn't
Right.
know actually how to make. I didn't know how many, like when you're building triangles, because that's the 3D mesh of triangles. You don't know what kind of granularity works with the engine until you build something and you find out. AQ40 was so much. There was such more geometry than I needed. And you can't actually even see the geometry, which is another reason why I'm not happy with it. Is
I
that
see.
even between those giant ribs, like the of the tunnels, I had this regular rhythm of like this big rib structure, and then there'd be a smush of organic stuff and another rib structure. It was almost like an accordion type of thing where there's lots of little ripples, and it made it harder and harder as when you're working in 3ds Max. That's the program that you make. You bend it one way and it's fine, but you can't bend it back. It's not just something simple. But I had bent these things so many ways that the geometry was just junk by the time that we launched the game. So yeah, it was just a learning experience.
Yeah.
But I think the most requested question, looking at the chat and everything, John, and I think we're all dying to find out, is out of everything you worked on in Vanilla WoW, all the caves, tunnels, dungeons,
Right.
what is your, what did you love designing the most? What is your baby? What is the thing that you're most proud of? And if you,
Right.
It may be a pain in the butt to explain it, but maybe you could take us through like how you designed it and like what the steps are to design a dungeon like in Vanilla WoW. Like, are you just given a blank
Right.
canvas or?
Well, the biggest thing was honestly convincing the dev team to make custom-made micro dungeons. Okay, we call them micro dungeons. I don't know what you guys call the non-instanced dungeons. The gold
Non-instanced.
mines, the
Yeah.
crypts. Okay, we call them micro
Right.
dungeon. And the theory was that people didn't want a different layout. They only care about the prize at the end. What's the item? Okay, and the item, and when I play WoW, that's what I care about too. I don't care about the layout. And so we didn't have proof that people wanted different layouts until we actually started testing the Dwarven area. The Dwarf area used to have one cave that we copied and pasted around. What's the Dwarven starting area?
Dunmore.
Anyway.
Coldridge Valley?
Coldridge Valley.
Coldridge
yeah.
Valley, baby.
Yeah,
Coldridge
Coldridge
Valley,
Valley,
yeah.
and the one next to
Lochmadan?
it is
Dunmore, Lochmadan.
Dunmore.
Yeah.
Dunmore. Okay.
So people got sick of seeing the same dungeon over and over, and that's when I finally got, okay, go ahead and do this thing. And that was my weekend project, is just making lots of micros. But my favorite micro, and I think that's really incentivizes people to explore, because when you know that it's just, Dungeon B, you kind of like, I've seen Dungeon B, there might be a different monster at the end, but who cares? So having proven that, I think the biggest thing that I'm most proud of, I liked BRD as my favorite dungeon, but the slag pits used to be Booty Bay geometry. What they did is they took the textures from Booty Bay, the docks, the flat dock texture, and the piled. What are those things that go?
Pistons or
The vertical things that hold docks together.
Oh,
God.
The giant like dock post type thing, like the big
Still-
wooden.
yeah, the post.
I don't know what the right word
Yeah,
is for that.
dock
Yeah.
post.
Sticks,
Yeah.
the big sticks.
Yeah, the big sticks. Okay, but it was a yellowish booty bag color palette.
Mhm.
Okay, they told the exterior designers just use what's already been made, and so they took the orc watchtowers, and they placed it around, and they had these yellow, and it's a volcanic dungeon or volcanic zone, and it just made no sense at all. And so I just reused the textures from Blackrock Spire to make them Dark Iron Dwarf, and it just completely changed the. Someone actually did show. I asked a number of people to find the picture of the before and after, and I never did get the after. Someone actually did send it to me, and I don't have it on me. It's somewhere probably on my hard drive, but it looks so bad. And because we didn't have any more time, there just wasn't time. And so that was one of my weekend projects where I would just ninja stuff in on Saturday and Sunday, and then after a couple weekends I'd have a bunch of assets, and then I'd say, now do you want to do it the right way? And then I go, okay, and then they'd have to check to see if the quest designers were okay with it. Were the guys who placed objects with the trade skill, were they okay with it? Because you can't just swap a dungeon because all the spawns move, all the area triggers move. You have to know that everybody can actually just swap a different dungeon out. So the slag pits looks like it belongs there.
Yeah.
You would never know that that's a thing that I'm most proud of, because it's not even a.
I noticed
awesome.
that in his book, you see him listing out dungeons, right? AQ, BFD, all this, and then almost out of place, you see him list slag pits in the book.
Yep.
And I was reading, I was like, whoa,
and
that's so interesting. Like the love shines through even when you placed it there, right, in that table of contents. Almost, I think this is the slag pits that we're looking at, right? I'm trying to find serious.
That's it. Yep.
It looks gorgeous, man. And so the takeaway for me is, like, every time I'm in the slag pits now, I'm gonna start looking for those manipulated booty bay type assets. Just this is really cool. And is the slag pits also the area that has those the dinosaurs that are
Incendosaurs? Yeah.
I always thought that area looked amazing as well.
Yeah. The lava,
Very unique.
I mean, it's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there
very
wasn't,
unique.
there was no interior. Those used to be the small cave, mountain caves. They were just the mountain caves. There's nothing there. Like, that entire dungeon wasn't scheduled. That's why there's probably not a lot of quests in there. Like, the least quested stuff is because I ninja'd stuff in and the quest designers had moved on. They'd already done that zone. Like the Badlands, those crazy gold mines, they're gigantic. My Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom gold mines.
Yeah, I didn't realize. Sorry. There's a cave in Mulgore, John, that the quest. You go into the quest. You have to kill this. You have to kill like the high end guy or whatever. But they make you go right in and kill the guy. But the cave is like 90 times bigger.
Yeah,
but you never get to see that part of the cave. And I just recently I was leveling a druid, and so he had stealth, and I went back. I was like, when I get cat form, I'm coming back here, and I went back there in stealth and walked around. It's gigantic.
Yeah.
But you only go in for this one guy. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's funny. One of the things after we shipped WoW, another thing I'm proud of is convincing the team to despawn a lot of the dungeons. They didn't want to keep working on the same dungeons over and over again. And that's one of the articles. You can find the articles. There's 3 articles about development if you want to actually see the level of detail in my book. If you go to whenitsready.com in the articles and interviews, there's 4 articles there. One of them talks about how I despawned, how I got the game designers, and took about 6 weeks of nagging the game designers to do this. And this is the messy process of stuff. Like, one level designer has no business talking about spawn design. I'm just being such a nudge and trying to get these guys to change something that they are responsible for. And the Mulgore mine was one of the. We were joking that it's a level 5 zone. Like the zone is Mulgore is 1 to 5, and you go into this cave, and there were so many spawns in the cave that you level up to 6 or 7, like they're gray by the time you get to the end of this micro dungeon, and you're just like, why is the quest gray when I turn it in? And it was just so funny. But that was the and I'm sure that's still the same process. You're improvising as you go.
I think my personal thing that I love the most of your creations, John, is Booty Bay, and I think a lot of us love Booty Bay, and the more time I spend there, I'll just notice other weird little things about it that I never noticed before. Like you can ring that bell, or at least it appears that you can. If you look up into that bell tower, it appears to be interactable. Do you remember designing Booty Bay, man? Like, was this your brainchild? It's a beautiful, inspired city, man. Maybe you could take us through.
Booty Bay was going to be, so we had 6 capital cities that we were going to build, one for each of the races. And Booty Bay was going to be a capital city for the Goblin race. Okay, the goblins were a neutral faction. Okay, we tabled that again. We realized, no, look, we have enough races. We don't need, another thing. So, originally, a lot of the developers were thinking it's going to be a lot like Stormwind, in the sense that Stormwind is like it works like a dungeon. At least before I made Stormwind flyable. It was a bunch of facades. That's what made Stormwind so hard to make it flyable, because there was a whole bunch of facades that it's kind of like we're at a carnival. If you ever look above a carnival, the buildings behind these facades are so ugly. You got the vents and the smokestack. There's a tractor trailer out there. It's complete. That's what Stormwind was like for many years. Okay, it was. We wanted Booty Bay to be this, not a giant city, but we thought that there would be so much geometry. This is again in the year 2000. There was so much geometry that we thought processors of graphic cards wouldn't be able to handle it. Booty Bay, when I ignored everybody telling me, no, we can't kill video cards. I said, okay, we'll test this on the low-end video card. We'll just do a low-end thing, and I just boom, 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 just copied and pasted a bunch of things, and we placed it down. And we were slowing things down, and what the great thing as a developer, you can turn off things like the interface. That's actually when we realized that our interface was costing us 20 frames per second. Okay, and so we realized, that's something we need to optimize. Okay, and again, this is the year 2000. We have to optimize this so when we release on E3, people believe that this game actually runs on computers of the day. And so we proved that we could show the entire city all at the same time. But if you notice, Booty Bay is in a cove, and that is developed not because of some. We're not trying to do Tortuga. We weren't trying to do a hole-in-the-wall gang type of feel, like the Juggernaut works.
Right.
It's not a surprise, but we're hiding the geometry of Stranglethorn, because as we're turning off things, we realize all the spawns, all the geometry, all the land, that is slowing down the experience in Booty Bay. Okay, and so crazy. We hide things. Now, much later, Scott Harton, the guy who wrote the engine, he says, well, let's just use fewer triangles off in the distance. And then we actually get back to the original point where Booty Bay could have just been on a flat terrain type of thing. But then we're working with a bowl, so we're thinking, okay, now how do we make this work? And someone came with the idea, let's make it like a hidey hole type of thing, and then we'll open up into this grand view of the town and
amazing view.
Yeah, and we didn't know how many textures. That's why we could use, and that's why there's so few textures in Booty Bay, because it's the first thing that I built that actually got textured. And the ship, the the ship that comes in and takes people away uses the same textures as Booty Bay because
Yeah.
we didn't know whether or not we didn't want that ship coming in and then, oh no, here comes the ship that's going to kill our video cards.
It's so interesting.
And that's just how things get built, and it was kind of painful for me because all the artists wanted a grand view of the thing. Everybody had a different debate. Is it more dramatic to have an entrance at the low point where you're looking up at the big thing, or if you're at a high point looking down? And I kind of thought that a high point looking down was a better thing because the camera's already pointing at the ground through the whole game. You're looting stuff on the ground. So that's kind of why we designed the entrance and all
kind of up on that top, right? But it looks so good when you come in from the boat, though, as well. And I gotta believe that you guys made it non-mountable, so you wanted it to feel bigger, right? So you couldn't mount. You can't mount up. That way, you have to, because if you mount up and you're running by something, obviously you're not gonna take as much time to look at it, look around, and
the mounts also would when the character models clip into the geometry, it was just hard to make all that work. And that's also the things that people like. Booty Bay, that's probably where I got the most props, like the doodads that designed a place. We call them doodads. Okay, so the hanging shark is a prop. A tree or a bush, those are all props. And Booty Bay got the most unique props, and that's probably why Karazhan is such a popular dungeon, is because Karazhan took 10 times longer to make than all those other dungeons that I'm just reusing the same textures over and over again. So yeah, it's visually a lot more stimulating to see something new. So Booty Bay is probably very popular.
It's really interesting when artistic design meets technological limitations and how they interact with each other, right? Like sometimes as players, we think you have this blank canvas and you just draw it up out of scratch, but it's more likely like that one guy who made all the famous statues. It's like a block of marble and you just chip away at it and it kind of reveals itself as you go. Do you remember who came up with the vision? I mean, there's so many unique things. Even the entrance where you go through the shark's mouth and everything. Like, was this inspired by Waterworld or anything like that? Do you remember?
The sharks. Oh, let's see. The shark's mouth. Do you mean the hanging shark or
As you go in from Stranglethorn Vale into Booty Bay, you have to walk through like this megalodon's teeth. I think, right?
Yes.
Am I incorrectly remembering this?
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That came from that old black and white photo of the scientists in the Light Lab codes standing inside this megalodon. Like all the developers, we knew exactly what that shark was. So pirates means sharks and sharks mean megalodon sharks. So giant sharks are more fun. So that just people are just this is why the human lands are a lot more developed and fleshed out than the non-human lands. It's easier to borrow it's easier to come up with ideas and just move forward, because if you're paying an artist to sit there and go, what do I do with a pig farm? What do I do with, like, out in the Barrens? It's like no one's from the Serengeti, okay?
Yeah.
So it's hard to come up with stuff that really fleshes out the Barrens. The Barrens was one of the level designers, Matt Sanders. He's our one of our top level designers. He hated the Barrens, and he built the Barrens. He just hated the concept of the Barrens being an empty zone, because you're supposed to make it.
Oh, I love the Barrens.
He did the Ayers Rock, that little tribute. But those are the things that you draw from, and the hanging shark comes from Jaws. I mean, that's just. These are the little memes that are just in the minds of the artists as they're going, and the longer it takes for you to come up with something different, and this is kind of like the hive geometry and Ankarash was so painful because I've never been in a bug hive before, a temple hive. It's harder to come up with new things. So.
I hate
and
bugs
when it
too.
happens slowly, then it's more painful to actually develop. And Booty Bay happened like that because the art, Bill Petrus, our art director, he said, just do Monkey Island. Are we good?
Oh, right.
And we're like, yeah, okay, yeah. Everybody on the team knew what monkey. They were like, yes, we want to make Monkey Island.
There it
okay?
is, the genesis of
You
Booty
know what I'm
Bay
saying?
right
Yeah.
there.
Everybody is now on the exact same page, and there's
Right.
no pain whatsoever in making
Right.
Booty Bay. You
So
know?
speaking of inspiration, did you take a lot of inspiration of Lord of the Rings as well? As an example, Blackrock Depths and the Slack Pits you just mentioned.
Yes, we Lower Blackrock Spire was the dungeon I made after. As soon as we saw the first Lord of the Rings movie, that is when I was like, oh yeah, we got to do. I think that's right after Rob Pardo and Jeff Kaplan said we need bigger dungeons, and I'm like, okay, I got an idea. You know, we've seen Mordor. Not Mordor.
Moria.
Yeah,
Moria,
we've
yeah.
seen
Moria.
Moria. We've seen Moria, so I can do my own Moria, and that's where Lower Blackrock Spire came from. It's just that big, grand scene of we'd rubble out dwarven geometry,
Right.
dwarven architecture. That was so easy to do. That was just there was zero pain in making that, and that probably took me a month to build.
Oh, wow.
Just zooming, because when you have that many ideas, but I think that's the only thing I would say that Lord of the Rings actually influenced.
What about
me
the
or
Atrium?
Any of us?
Remember the part in the Atrium? It's kind of very similar to that part in the Mines of Moria in BRD, where it's like all those pillars and the braziers. Not
Oh, you're talking about the
braziers,
Lyceum.
sorry. The Lyceum. I'm sorry, the
Oh,
Lyceum.
the Lyceum?
Yeah.
Oh no,
Yeah.
actually, the Lyceum was like the laziest rooms. The rooms that I dislike, that I don't respect, are there's an array tool, ARRAY. When you array geometry, what you're doing is you're copying and pasting something. So if you have a perfect square, then you can just do one corner and then copy it 4 times.
And
You've
just-
got a room.
yeah.
Right.
A round room is the same way. You just pillar, 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 pillar. The Lyceum was just a copy and paste job, and it was just a simple way to create lots of geometry, because I was flat out of ideas. I had done that was actually one of the last things I built for the Blackrock dungeons, all the Blackrock
Gotcha.
dungeons.
It's
was
so
that.
funny you say that though, because a lot of people
'Cause I was-
love it, man. A lot of people
Oh,
love
I
it.
yeah,
love
and
it
it's like
too. Yeah.
it's the type of thing when
Yeah.
even as a YouTuber, you create a video, you have like so
Well-
low expectations for it, and somehow it blows up, and people love it so much. Like it's so crazy
Well,
that for
you're-
you, like you feel like you made that so quick, but so many people love it, and it reminds them of Moria and all this. Sorry.
Well, let me tell you, that's the game designers saving my ass, okay? Because when there was no concept at all for the room, just a bunch of pillars, they had this idea of like, oh, let's just have this rhythm of guys, and you kill everybody in one square at a time, and that's how you move through the Lyceum. They came up with that and saved the room. That's.
Did you have
Not
any
planned
input
at all.
in Ironforge as well, or is that someone else that created it?
No, Aaron Keller did the city. He did the cities. I used to joke that I did I did the Booty Bay counts as a city. And he's like, no, he built Ironforge, he built Stormwind. He's like, no, that does not count as a city. Because Ironforge was, again, we had the stockades in Stormwind. We had
Right.
the Hellfire stuff underneath Orgrimmar. There's going to be old, abandoned sections in Ironforge that we realized we don't need, and so I think they're still down there. They're not very well, like they're just meshed out plain boxes. But Aaron did that. He did all
Now-
our cities.
He was an Alliance player, wasn't he?
Oh,
Aaron.
I don't think Aaron ever got past level 30.
Okay, yeah, I was just
and
wondering.
most of the artists didn't play WoW, actually.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
Well,
Roman Kenny was a raider. He is a hardcore player, way hardcore than me or Scott Harton. Me, Scott, and Roman were the 3 people on the team with max level characters
Wow.
doing the raid game. Nobody else, because they had families. We were fixing bugs. you really have to want to play World of Warcraft to that level, because you got a guild, and then you got to be available at certain nights. And when you're talking, every coffee conversation, every lunchtime conversation, every conversation during the day is wow, 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 for years and years and years. And when you have Christmas and Thanksgiving, and now your cousins are playing WoW, what do they want to talk about when they know you were one of the developers?
Yeah.
You know, you go across state, and now you're talking about World of Warcraft again. So to also play the game, no, it's hard enough to find talented developers that there's no need to also require them to really be into the MMO.
Right.
What class did you play actually?
Sorry?
What class did you play actually?
I played a druid.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I played the druid. I wanted to shapeshift a horde.
Oh,
nice.
Druid.
Yeah, I've complained that they designed all the druid raid sets. They did it with a night elf. That was how they would actually develop it. And then they would port it over to the, that fits the Tauren. And I'm like, I'm wearing all these little frilly things, and this is not what a Tauren actually should dress up like.
So, speaking of factions, right? I mean, you mentioned that Booty Bay, that they were going to be their own faction, a neutral faction, right? The goblins.
Way earlier on. So way early on as well, Kevin mentioned to us that there was no factions, right? So
So I'm wondering, what camp were you on? He said there was kind of a divide between wanting factions, Horde Alliance, and not wanting factions. Were you involved in that? Were you on either side of that in the beginning?
Pretty much. That came only at Dark Age of Camelot. Showed us that you could have factions and prevent griefing, because griefing was the thing that was the one thing that all games, MMOs, there's no way to stop griefing, there's no way to stop griefing. That was, again, things that everybody knew. There's no way to stop griefing. And Blizzard's just like, well, you can't attack each other. You just turn that button, and they're like, oh, well, we stopped griefing. What do you know? But having Dark Age showed that you could have zones in which players could attack one another. And there was so many discussions on how to prevent players from camping, the entrance of getting into that zone, and just so many considerations to stop griefing when you allow it. But yeah, that wasn't originally part of the plan. I was fine with it. I think I played Dark Age of Camelot, so to me it was obvious. But the EverQuest, the old guards who played EverQuest, they were like, look, you're gonna... They would say something that's so scary sounding. So when they say, "Oh, I can guarantee you, I'm gonna be a griefer if you do that," like as a game designer, like, "Oh shoot, do I really want to put my name on this? Do I really want to paint myself in the corner on this? Is this the hill I want to die on?" So those were the conversations. Probably just some of the old guard EQ people who said, "No, I'm totally gonna be able to grief whatever system you come up with. I'll find a way." And that had been the case in Anarchy Online, EverQuest. So there was that was basically the controversy.
John, is there anything with all your creations? Does anything crack you up or amuse you with regard to how players, in practice, interact with the things you've designed? Things that come to mind. I know that I saw Warsong Gulch there listed on your book. In Warsong Gulch, they have all these crazy jumps now. They're manipulating the physics to get up, to the high ground in a million different ways. Or in the caves, Skull Rock and some of these caves, you can do this little jump where you manipulate the physics and you can go from this little pointy finger-like object up to the top where the chest and the Gazas is there anything? Does that spark anything? Or
it's kind of funny. John Cash, he's from a first-person shooter. He worked at id Software. He's the tech lead for Quake 2, and he would say, "John, let me tell you, I'm going to find places. I'm going to be able to get where you think that I can't get." And that's just the old first-person shooter mentality of, I can rocket jump anywhere that you think I can't get to. And so it really wasn't a surprise, like stuff like that you kind of expect. and you just fix them as they find them, because that's really the only way you're gonna know of all the places to do. But geez, what really surprises me, getting over the walls of Ankarash was probably the most inventive of kiting a monster. These monsters used to have, it was the only monster in the world that would ever do knockback, and we figured this is the one zone where there's really nothing to be knocked back into because it's just a bunch of sand, you know. And there was a way to get the monster to boot you over the hills or over the wall of Ankarash. And then now you can run around beyond the southern walls I'm talking about in the 8Q40 instance. So you could break the game that way, but stuff like that is pretty expected.
I was wondering if you could tell about a dungeon that's really started to grow on me, and I never really realized it until I started playing it more and more, is Skullomance. And I think you captured... I think BRD is great, and I think it's wonderful, and I think it's the quintessential dungeon for many people, but for some reason, the more and more I go into Skullomance, I feel like you've got the overall ambience and atmosphere matches the dungeon so well. And there's one section where like there's altar with these green candles, and I'm like, I just have to sit there and watch and just stop and look at this place. I don't know. I know the overall was kind of like the dark school, kind of like that's the idea, but man, what an amazing dungeon that is. Skullomance is great.
Yeah. Well, the Skullomance was also a point of a personal point of pain for me. That's one of the articles that I wrote. Again, you can have you read the article on Skullomance?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I released with the WoW Diary. There's a little pamphlet that has the 4 articles in them, but they're also free online. There's no ads or anything on my website. So if you check it out, whenitsready.com, under the articles section, there's the Skullomance. It's about, I would say, about 8,000 words. About maybe 10 pages long. There's a lot of art that went into Skullomance after I had built it. It started off as a micro dungeon, and the game designers just said, "Oh, this is so cool that we want to make it an instance." And they said, "Fine." The artists saw it and said, "There's not enough art here to actually call this an instance. This doesn't look good." And they felt that they were left out of the process because we actively just said, "Oh, let's just make it an instance." And so this is one of those things. There's all hands on deck. Is like probably the last 2 months of the project. 10 people started building those candelabras, the green flame. It really got a lot of love, like more so than a lot of other dungeons, to make it so good. And it's funny that you appreciate the ambiance, but honestly, that's one of the easy things, like the crypts. Anything, again, if it's human, we all have we all have seen horror movies, we've seen Dracula, we know the memes, we've been to that so many times those crypts are some of the easiest things to build and make it cool, because there's so much to work with.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe let's talk about maybe the Sunken Temple then, because I feel like that maybe is a dungeon that kind of is not
Right. Not a lot of love.
Yeah,
falls between the cracks. I think Sunken Temple for me is one of those. I'm a big Indiana Jones fan, right? And one of those that feels like it's this temple in the middle of a lake. It's kind of like been abandoned. Almost has the feeling of like a Mayan temple. You know what I mean? Like in the middle of a lake.
Yeah.
And I love troll architecture and troll lore and stuff like that. Right. And it's honestly one of those dungeons where when you go in there, you're really like, wow, this dungeon is beautiful. It's really it's one of those ones that for whatever reason just slips through the cracks of my mind. But every time I do it, I'm like, this dungeon is awesome. I love it. It's great. I don't know how you guys feel about that as well. Yeah.
It was one of those copy and paste dungeons that I kind of don't like, because it's easy to get lost when you copy and paste geometry.
Oh yeah.
One side of the hallway looks exactly
easy to get lost.
It is easy to get lost.
That's so true, man.
Oh yeah, and when you don't see a progression of geometry. Like, geometry is one of the things that you want to progress. Players want to feel that they're moving forward on something. And when it's the same copy and paste section of geometry, it's less enjoyable. You don't feel like you're making progress as much, even though you're killing the monsters. There's just something in the environment that just, because there's not a fundamental change. Now, once you get into the center and kill it all, kill the final boss, then it's all good. But it's that's not one of my favorite dungeons, but I didn't build it. So
if you could go back in time to vanilla, like just go back and knowing everything you know about the game now, would there be any dungeons you would have done differently? Anything that you wish you could have done, or maybe wish you didn't do at all?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, on Crush, definitely I just throw it away and start over. I think then it would be much cooler. Because again, you talk about copy and pasting. That dungeon doesn't change. Like, you see a lot of the same hallway over and over. And even though I tweaked and made this hallway different from the next, it's just too much of the same. There was a lot of times where the art team just was sick of making textures for Ankarash because it just wasn't very inspiring to work on. If you're an artist and you're painting the side of a hive tunnel, once you've done it once, you don't want to do it again and come up with a different thing. And I would have done fewer hives. I think we did too much hives outside of Silithus. It's too much of the same type of geometry. Definitely make the Wailing Caverns smaller, but the maze section was our experiment to whether or not do people enjoy mazes. We had no idea until we realized people don't enjoy mazes. So that was the last maze we tried to do for World of Warcraft. And thankfully they got rid of it. Thank God they got rid of it.
No, it's a bit double, isn't it? Because BRD is basically a maze, and I really like that. But it's different. I guess it's just different pathways. I don't necessarily like linear dungeons.
Yeah. Well, the maze section is intentionally done to be a maze, like to be confusing. And then they said, "Oh, it's not fun," and I'll say, "Okay, I'll leave. The shortest path will be a trail of mushrooms. If you follow the mushrooms, it's the shortest path, but it takes you through the entire thing. Okay,
right?
But it is linear. But nobody ever noticed that there was a trail of mushrooms because there's so once the monsters are running around, you're not going to notice a trail of mushrooms. I could make that trail so visible, like so I could have put bright lights along the whole thing. You would have never seen it once there's monsters and bodies to loot, and yeah.
Was it true what they said about Molten Core? Some people have, there's rumors in the community that people spun it up. They spun it up in like a week or something, and that it it was like a last minute thing or something like that. Do you recall any of those conversations?
Yeah. That's one of the best. That's one of the happier stories at the end of my book is when we did the Molten Core. Jeff Kaplan, he did not get the producer's green light to make another raid dungeons. He only had Onyxia, but he had the monsters. The monster animations were there. And so he didn't have the scripting of the monsters. No one was available for that. And he didn't have a dungeon. I mean, there was no dungeon there. We had a bridge, and that's where we ended it. We knew we were going to build a dungeon. So he said, he knew I was a ninja. He said, "Hey, John, how long will it take you to do this raid dungeon?" Super simple. And I said, "It'll take me about 2 weeks." And in 2 days, we were going through the entire layout. Okay.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
And again, we're talking geometry that's so low polygon that it's actually, I had most of it done in the first day. Like the second day was just like tweaking some stuff. And again, none of the textures were actually applied to it. We were just looking at the size. So I ninja'd in the dungeon, and Scott Mercer was a Team 1 level scripter. Team 1 was, they were working on Warcraft 3. And so level design for Team 1 was lots and lots and lots of scripting. So Scott Mercer, he just designed all the boss fights in molten core, and he wasn't even on the World of Warcraft team. So Jeff puts all this stuff together behind the backs of the producers, and he says, "Oh, look, we can actually do another. Oh, look, it happens, that we did this, and it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission." So this is one of those things where the producer's like, "Okay, if it's not too hard, if the item guys can make the stuff, then let's go ahead and try to get this done as well." So yeah, 2 weeks was. That's probably it took a lot longer to hunt down all the bugs, but I would say that was probably done around, I would say, in the summer before November when we shipped. So
wow.
Scott Mercer had, I would say, 6 months of solid internal playtesting to find all the bugs before the Raiders actually got a hold of Molten Core.
That's crazy.
As opposed to Blackwing Lair, which took maybe much longer, or was it about the same amount of time to design all these out, like 2 weeks for MC versus?
Well, again, Blackwing Lair was. It's always done with respect of what else is being done on World of Warcraft. We were fixing, once we shipped Vanilla WoW, we had a shit ton of bugs. We had lots of bugs to do, tons and tons of bugs to work on. And so that's why it took so long to get PvP out. That's why it took so long to get new zones and finish our mid-level dungeons, is because everybody was really focused on their bug list and fixing things that were in game but weren't functional. So who knows? I don't even remember how long I did Blackwing Lair, but I can't remember at what point. Yeah, actually I do. I did. Yeah, we had a new artist, Matt Melizia. He made a lot of the props for Blackwing Lair. Like the game designers saved the Lyceum. Blackwing Lair was pretty boring until this artist came up, and to have a whole bunch of custom-made props for Blackwing Lair, specifically that laboratory, to actually sell that idea, that story, he cranked that stuff out. It was really hard for him to do that. So yeah, he saved us in that regard. That wasn't
John. When it comes to boss rooms, I'm really intrigued. Like, do they come to you and say, "Hey, there's going to be a boss. We need a boss room here," or do you like go in there afterwards and say, "Okay, this is going to be Ragnaros's boss room," or "This is going to be where we have Nefarion," or is it something that they kind of work with once you developed it, or do you develop it after they tell you who's going to be there, that kind of thing?
Okay, so we talked a little bit about long-term plans. Mm-hmm. Like Metzen will come up with an idea for a dungeon that just sounds like there's a lot of fertile ground for creative ideas. Okay, right. He'll come up with something like that. Like one thing we didn't do a Wild West themed dungeon for the Barrens. Okay, we were going to do that, but it just wasn't necessary. We already had the Razorfin stuff happening, and you just didn't need the content. So the process of making a dungeon, this is like once Metzen pitches the vibe, like for Wailing Caverns, he says straight up, Isle of Dread, just give me dinosaurs, give me they're kind of bestial, like they might have a little bit of intelligence, but they're not going to build anything.
Right.
And then I'll say, can you build that dungeon? And I'll say, yeah, I can do that. I can just do a cave. And then he leaves me alone for 2 years. Okay, the dungeon gets made, and then it gets textured, then it gets lit, and then props get placed. And then they come back, and so Chris will sit down, and this is how it'll go. He'll got Chris Metzen, our creative director, our design guys. Okay, the game designers are the ones who script everything. And I'm usually there just to hear if they need any extra stuff to retroactively add things into a dungeon. And he'll say, okay, he'll come up like the Wailing Caverns was a giant murloc or something ridiculous. Right. We had seen so many of the monsters over and over that we couldn't think of. There weren't any murlocs in that area of actually until the
Oasis. Yeah, the
Oasis. Yeah,
right.
The Oasis I think was added after um, we placed the dungeon. Okay, so that was one of the last things in that zone. So we figured, well, no one's seen a Murloc, so that would be a kind of a joke type of thing, joke monster. But it's the frequency at which you see a monster that'll often decide the body type. If it's like Karazhan used to be Mal'Ganis, used to be a demon in Karazhan, and he's just residing in this temple, just kind of brooding, almost like a Batman kind of vibe. And the wings of Karazhan used to have wings. There's the library wing, the magic wing, and the demon wing. Okay, there were 3 side towers that were going to be around this central tower, and those were just the wings of the dungeon, and that used to be the vibe. And then Mal'Ganis went somewhere, and then he wanted to put Warcraft 3. We went to Karazhan for Warcraft 3 to get Medivh.
Yeah,
Medivh.
yeah.
But it became less of all about demons. That used to be Karazhan was going to be all about demons. And so, in a creative, for deciding like boss fights and what monsters go there, it's depending on what players have seen on that progression, because sometimes you switch the levels of the zones, that changes things up. But Chris hates coming up with names on the spot. Like he says, okay, I'll give you a name, because he has so many heads, because he's the creative director for 3 games, StarCraft, Diablo, and World of Warcraft. And so for him to keep track of all the little stories, of all the little dungeons and all the little zones, it's just not going to happen, So once that is decided, then the quest designers, they solidify the story, and that's when they really boil down what really works for a good story for this dungeon. And then they just cut off all the stuff that interferes with that story, and that's what the players come in, they see a cohesive, internally consistent story. Kill the boss, they think, oh wow, this was the vision for the whole time, and it's so not the case. Oh,
I see.
So
that room where the Murloc boss was that even there in the beginning, or did you add that once they said that?
Yeah, the whole Wailing Caverns used to end at the end of the big round room where the instance line starts. Like that
whole,
big room.
Oh,
that was the end room. And when we first had this is probably 2001 when that was done. Alan Adham, I remember this is when he had the idea of putting the instance not at the mouth of the cave, but later on in the cave. When he put the instance line there, I was like, wait a minute. That means all the stuff that I've worked on for the past year and a half, that doesn't even count. Now I have to build the dungeon.
Oh,
and
my
God. Yeah, and so I built that snake tunnel, and then there's the, not snake tunnel, but that little tunnel that goes to the gorge in front of the boss room. Mm-hmm. That was the second iteration of the Wailing Caverns. And they said, no, this has to be much, much, much bigger. And I said, well, fuck, okay, I'll put another wing of the dungeon. And that was the wing with the waterfalls and the plants that players are spiraling up and around. That's the Murloc. They handed that in. They said, no, it's got to be bigger than that. I'm like, wow, seriously? And then I added the snake where it's tons of stalactites. I had no idea. I had that's probably one of my rooms that I'm really proud of, because it took a lot of work, a lot of manual finagling things to get to pull that up. Then that's built, and then they're saying it's not big enough, and that's when I said, I'm out of ideas, guys. I'm going to put a maze section there. I'm going to break that progression up and they said, okay, it's pretty much big enough. And that's, that's how, and the boss room is like, he's like, the crone on the 13th Warrior, at the end of the 13th Warrior, that crone with all the roots hanging down. Just give me something like that. That was the inspiration for that room.
Wow.
It's that haphazard, the process.
With regard
Crazy,
to Wailing
John.
Caverns, I remember I heard about this from someone who read your book back in the time. I'm aggressively reading your book right now, and I'm just absolutely fascinated. But they were saying that in Wailing Caverns, if you follow the mushrooms, those kind of yellow mushrooms, you will find your way to, you will be able to make your way to the last boss and stop getting lost. First of all, was that truly intentional? Second of all, is that an Easter egg? And if it is an Easter egg, is there any more of them that are pretty juicy from any of the other dungeons that anything come to? And then the last question is, did you place every single mushroom down yourself, or was that somebody else?
Oh yes, yeah. Oh no, that's me placing all those mushrooms.
That's sick. So every time we see a mushroom, we know that he actually placed it. This right here.
Well, that's everything. Cool. I mean, the all the rocks on the ground, those are all individually placed.
Wow.
That's just part of the gig. I mean, that's actually the fun part, because you can move pretty fast. It looks good, it's textured, everything's lit. It's fun to actually work on that level. But yeah, placing the mushrooms was just a band-aid on trying to get players to navigate the maze, and it's a pretty weak band-aid. It's a band-aid that's been in the dishwasher. You've washed dishes, and the band-aid is you put it back on. It was a pretty weak band-aid, so it's not even intended to be an Easter egg.
John the Mushroom King.
Yeah.
I don't know why I find that so cool. Every time I go Wailing Caverns, after hearing that, I just look for the yellow mushrooms, and I think of you, man. Yeah. Is there anything kind of like that in other dungeons at all, though? Like a Band-Aid or anything?
Well, let's see. It's things that don't work. The runes in Molten Core, I knew we had 7 runes that, you know what? They were things that I thought they would integrate into fights. I would put in what is Executus, Major Domo Executus?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's his fight. When you're fighting him, there's this pit, a smoky pit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just put that pit there going, I hope the game designers come up with something. Okay.
Nice.
And
Gotcha.
and mostly, honestly, that's how I like to design. And a lot of this is a personal perspective on how to make games and how we made games. They don't do stuff usually right now it'll be more top down. They'll hand them a layout, and they'll the game designers will come up with stuff, and then the level designers will then flesh that out. So it's a different process than what they use today.
So crazy
on how they do that. But yeah, it gives them a lot better idea. You don't make mistakes like the gigantic. It's funny that the Wailing Caverns is so painfully big, but when you also know that, they could have devoted all that time to making other things cool, those are kind of the mistakes that you avoid when you have a top-down development cycle. It's a lot more predictable.
Right.
And that's just some of the things that, when you have... there's a great book, Out of Control, that talks about this spectrum of having control, high creativity, and control with high predictability, and uncontrolled groups, which have high productivity, but there's lots of mistakes and lots of dead ends. WoW was the latter. We made lots of content that just went nowhere. We made whole zones like the Emerald Dream was just a disaster over and over again. It was this high concept idea that just face planted. It just didn't. It was just weird. Weird.
It's crazy though, because you're saying that, and I'm listening to obviously there was a lot of stuff that didn't make it in the game, right? But
right.
If I were to have thought, okay, how is BW all made? To me, in my mind, it'd be someone said, "Hey, John, this first room we're gonna have Razor Gore, then we're gonna have Vale in the second room, and then we're gonna have this awesome balcony where Nefarian's gonna be." That's in my mind how it would make sense to develop. But to hear it was more of the opposite, where you develop these things and then you guys work together, and then that just boggles my mind in a way.
And the reason. The reason why that doesn't work, I'll riff on that idea. If we had that type of granularity, if they said, "Oh, we'll do Razor Gore here and we'll do this and there," then the problem with that is 2 years later I would be done with the dungeon. Like, and not with me being done. Like I could mesh it out in like say a month, but then it has to go onto the queue of when it gets textured. Okay.
Right.
And
right.
once it gets textured, then it sits there in the file system until an exterior level designer places the dungeon. Okay, that zone has to actually have been built for you to place it, because you don't want to place all the spawns in there, and because you can't just grab the dungeon and the spawns at once and move it all together.
Gotcha.
Each object in WoW Edit, because it just didn't have that. You probably can do that today, but back then you didn't have that. So you have a huge lead time, and then when you have 2 years of development, the number of things that change is someone could have done another haunted castle or crypt idea, and suddenly that stuff doesn't even go into the game, you know?
Right.
So you want to just minimize all your risks, and that's why you kind of don't plan ahead.
So
sorry. Yeah, I have a very important question for a guildie of mine about Molten Core. He claims since the very first day we were in Molten Core that there is actually a cave near Lucifron that he thinks was supposed to be a shortcut towards Ragnarok's room. Is that true?
He's kind of right. At the end of the dogs, okay, I forget what they're called. The lava.
The one towards Magmadar, those dogs, or the
the dogs.
Yeah.
It's the first
So
one
it's
you
Lucy
kill.
Magmadar, yeah.
Yeah.
You know who? There is a small tunnel connecting that to. Oh, who's that big ass beater?
Golmeg?
Golomeg, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tunnel connecting that, and you can actually see the layout. There's this tiny little tunnel connecting them, and it makes the dungeon longer if we just snip that. That was the only change that Jeff made. He said, and what's funny is at the time, Jeff was a quest designer. You know, he didn't know what he could request or not. He's so apologetic, saying, John, you know, I really liked it, and we're really behind it. And he's going through this whole thing before he gets to the thing that has to change. And I couldn't care less about that stupid little tunnel.
Right.
You know, it was like the dorkiest. There's no art to it at all. And so I just snipped it, and it makes the whole thing. That was the one change in the Molten Core. So
that's so crazy.
Guildie will like that.
That's awesome, Dunedain,
Every new
yeah.
member, he's always like, hey, you know, this is the cave where you were supposed to be able to shortcut to another room.
That's one. You know, what's Ragnaros? Yeah, Ragnaros's room is the one room I wish I could change. If you want something I really want to change, so I want to make his. No, hold on. You're gonna like it when I say
Okay,
this.
okay, let's hear it. Yeah.
Take the very center of that room, the bottom, and pull it down. So now it's a spiral going down. Okay, so now you can jump from the outer rings to the inner rings, but you can't jump back.
Oh,
okay.
That sounds so cool. Yeah.
How freaking cool! And I can't believe that. Like, I was in the center. I'm thinking, well, they have to fight this lava god. I'll just put a spiral. That sounds good. And that's literally, you know, I've got 2 days to build this to show to Jeff. I'm not going to sit here wait for concept sketches or consult with anyone. I'm just going to riff on something. So I just put a spiral there, but I didn't make it a 3D funnel type of thing. And I think that could have been so freaking cool.
You're absolutely right. I could just see the rings up top, like the casters casting down on Ragnaros, and all the melee on the bottom. Yeah.
And you don't have to look up to see Ragnaros anymore. If you're on the outer ring, he's on eye level. And so, like now we can actually hit guys that are on the outer ring. Oh man, that would have been so cool.
Yeah, that would have been interesting from a game designer, from a game thematic perspective. Yeah. I wonder if they just wanted them to be more imposing. I wonder, do you think that's why they decided, or was this not proposed?
Oh, I just didn't have the idea. I'd never
it.
seen what a raid looked like at all. I didn't see an EQ raid. I'd never seen, like, the idea when we had the first dragon, Adam Byrne, one of our animators, did the dragon. It took him like 3 weeks to do the dragon animations.
I love the dragon.
And to build it. Yeah. Adam Byrne is an incredible artist, and he did this, and we placed it in game. It was the first time in the game where we had a giant-sized creature, and all the artists are going, we can have that? Is that something that's even possible? And it was just such a revelation that, oh, here's the scale of, yes, we can have creatures that are larger than like an ogre, you know. We've never seen anything like that. And so I just didn't know anything. I just put a spiral because it was in the center of a round dungeon. That's really the thought that was put into it. No thought to game design.
Wow.
Was there any other dungeon designers? Like, I almost feel like by the way you're explaining things that they gave each level designer, such as yourself, sort of their own dungeon, and it was like one person doing it. Was that the case? So you had, like, were you competing with the other guys too, trying to make better dungeons than them?
You know what? I was competing to do all the dungeons. I was jealous whenever somebody got another dungeon. I wanted to do that dungeon also, and I'm like, oh man, I could do that. The one thing I really wanted to do is a castle, and Shadowfang was the only castle in the game, and we had to bend the producers' arms behind their back to trust us to figure out how to get the players out on the parapets. Cause
So good.
Yeah, we said, look, we could just copy a zone and we paste it, and it'll be like and they're like, but that's weird. They're not going to see players running around along. Like, no one's going to care about that. It's going to be so freaking cool to be on the edge. But after the months of debate on that, whether or not we could pull that off, yes, then we went forward. But I wanted to do a castle so bad. The only thing I didn't want to build was Undercity. Undercity, that's where Jose and Dana built the Undercity, and they had a vision that I could not have done. Like, I had that whole, I don't know what you call that. It's almost like it's a small world after all type of that they made undead fun. Like, they made it really fun and I just didn't have that vision. It would have been just this dingy, ugly little crypt. Metzen kind of got upset actually about that direction. That was one point where he actually kind of blew up. I go over this in my book where he had to apologize. Like, look, I was kind of a dick back there. You know, I have to realize you guys have your vision and it's a lot better than mine, you know, but because they just departed and they followed their vision. It turned out better.
Wow.
So, I have a question that's more thematic and overarching than just dungeons, but it was in the book, and I just wanted to kind of cover this. I think it would be really interesting to talk about. I think I know the answer, but I want to hear from you. Sure. So, you have a picture of Valgard, which was I guess like an old city or town that was going to be in the game, in the book.
Oh yeah, Valgard. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the original art direction from what it looked like was much more realistic and proportional.
Right.
Why did they deviate from that? Why did they be more cartoony, more unrealistic art design?
Right. The reason why is because it was the art for Warcraft 3 wasn't wonky yet. Warcraft 3, that was such an old photo that the meme of Warcraft 3, the stocky characters, the way everything is fat, and you know, and that is just a throwback to the pixelated, you know, what 32 or 16 by 16, 32 by 32 bit pictures of that's the art you have to convey an ogre or a orc, and you have to exaggerate their arms to even have that stuff to read at all on 2D those 480 those
the small, like the sprites or whatever they're called, or the smaller
sprites, but no, we didn't. That was just because it was tied closely together, the Warcraft 3 product. They were basically made at the same time.
Do you think that's kind of lended itself to classics, like timelessness, is the fact that it's not realistic, and the fact that it doesn't have proportions that are bounded in reality? I think that kind of makes it more timeless.
Yeah, it's honestly WoW was really on the edge of it was on the edge of creating an environment that's a lot more believable. If you look at the first-person shooters, they had to constantly hide geometry. That was the one driving principle. Quake was only showing 200 polygons at the same. That's the dungeon. The EverQuest dungeons were maybe 300 polygons in total for the entire dungeon. We had and so we had the luxury of having video cards. We had the Voodoo 1, the Voodoo 2, the Rage just came out, and there were such huge leaps in geometry that we could think. We had the luxury of putting more art into 3D. Like, when I came to the team, I didn't even think that it was possible to render, because we hadn't seen buildings that were skewed or anything. Like, just no one had ever done it before, and until you actually get into the editor and say, well, this is what it looks like. Okay, now let's put it into the game. Oh, this is what it feels like in the game. We were worried that the dungeons, like the buildings, were going to be too big because the camera falls behind the players. We had these houses. When you look at the player next to a farmhouse, the farmhouse is like it's the size of a courthouse. I mean, it's gigantic next to a player, and we thought that would look weird. And until we actually got used to looking at it in game, we didn't even know if we would be going into houses. Like, that's how bad we thought it was going to look. And so the luxury of being able to put proportions out of whack was just something that, frankly, some of the artists, Brandon Idle, he basically designed the tile sets for Warcraft 3. He designed all the monsters for World of Warcraft. He designed the character. He and Roman tag teamed a lot on the characters, and he also did a lot of the tile sets. He just had sometimes you get an artist who is just way much further than all the other artists, has a lot more vision, and you can just point to it, and then now all the other artists go, okay, yeah, we can do that, because there's so many different ways you can go until somebody actually nails something. And usually when they do, it's not political. It's usually obvious to even the non-artists on the team, which is the nicer look, the cooler look. So that's kind of how it's done. It's you learn that, oh yeah, we can make things, we can add style. Now, I think it's pulled back away from that style because we have a change of art directors, that it's a lot less, like, you'll see things that are now upright, just having things that are parallel was a no-no in vanilla WoW. Like, you have to, if they're railings on, if you look at railings or anything, they're either skewed, or if it's like a pole, you will flare at the bottom of the pole, so it's more like of a cone. So that's just, you skew everything, and sometimes you just forget the skew stuff and things go in, more realistically. But
now, John, you said earlier, obviously you were on the team for quite a while, I believe, until 10 years, right? So and I know you have a lot written down about vanilla, but obviously, with TBC coming out, the hype around all that, I know you did a lot in TBC as well. You obviously, you created Karazhan, which was originally supposed to be in vanilla, but ended up being in TBC, the crypts and all that. Now, I remember last time we talked, I'm trying to remember what dungeons and raids that you had a part of in TBC. I think you said Auchindoun was one of them, right?
No.
No?
I actually was busy doing, PvP. We did, I honestly, Burning Crusade, I missed most of it. I was I was the only one who was left on the original team. Everyone else had left, and so I was the only one technically capable of fixing a lot of the bugs with, all of the dungeons and all of the buildings in the world. We were ramping up new additions to the dev team and frankly, I said, look, these guys, I've had so much creative creativity that I wanted the other guys to say, look, you guys build dungeons, you guys see what you can do. Because frankly, I was too busy fixing bugs. When I left the WoW team, I'd fixed more bugs than any other dev at Blizzard at the time.
Oh my god! Well, thank you for that.
Well, Mike Morheim made the joke. Well, he's probably the guy who's caused more bugs than any other developer at the in Blizzard's history. But no, I was fixing the whole departments.
So what kind of bugs, like in TVC, like were they? I remember you said something about PvP. Were there a lot of like just like game breaking bugs that were like?
Well, I was actually building Warsong Gulch, and that that was actually a lot harder. That was based on a Quake 3 map that I did. I wrote an article again. WhenIt'sReady.com. There's an article on Warsong Gulch on how that happened, and that making the orc and the night elf base identical was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Because in Quake 3, you just copy the exact same geometry.
Right.
World of Warcraft, they're two different styles, but you have the exact same geometry. So it was kind of this weird thing that took longer than it should have. But honestly, it was dumb stuff. It was texture seams on all the dungeons. Anything with, basically all the bugs for the department. That was what I was doing mostly. And I think was... the Next Ramus, was that the Burning Crusade, or was that
that was the end of Vanilla? Yeah.
Was that the end of? Oh, okay. I didn't know.
It was
the last raid in Vanilla.
I thought it was Wrath too. Okay, so I worked on that. Dana Jan, who had left after Vanilla WoW, he'd built the bulk of Next Ramus. Okay, I took over. I redid one of the wings, and I did like a couple other things.
Do you remember which wing it was?
It was the A-bomb wing.
Okay, there it is.
Oh,
there
nice.
it is. When you're in the A-bomb wing,
Patchwork.
Maybe it was the Spider Wing. Now that I think about it, yeah. No, it was the A-bomb wing. That one wasn't done, and I think I made rooms. Yeah, but that was. Oh my gosh, yeah. But Dana Jan built that in 2003 or 2004, and when it shipped, I have no idea when it shipped. But sometimes that's like Karazhan. It just took forever. Karazhan was Burning Crusade, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Or between one of the
it existed in Vanilla. It just wasn't rated. Yeah.
There's been a lot of questions about the deep run tram, and also that people love to get people's thoughts about that crypt behind Karazhan. I know it's not in the dungeon technically, but there's this kind of really macabre, like kind of just terrifying underwater lair of dead people that are kind of like floating.
Oh yeah, that was my Big Trouble in Little China tribute.
I remember that.
So you did do that one? That was you?
Yeah, that was me.
Oh,
and
let's
I kind
go.
of there's a good story about that. I kind of got in trouble because what I did. Okay, so basically in the editor you can name stuff. Okay, and if you want to name the room, John's Retreat, you can do that. All right, but then it shows up in game, and then the game designers go, well, we don't want this called to be John's Retreat. Let's call this the Rookery, the Dragon Rookery. And they'll come up with their own name. Because that never actually got worked on, they saw all those names in the localization. So anything that gets English applied to it gets outputted in a text file. And this is kind of back... how you localize something into Chinese or Japanese or any other language is it just shows up in a text file. And I remember the localization people were sitting right outside my door, and they were asking Chris Metzen, what is this about the upside down hell for sinners? And Metzen is the watchdog for all things that get approved. Okay, and I'm going, uh-oh. And because I see the look on Metzen's face, he's going, I have no idea who put that in there, but that that should not go in there. And, like, now it's like I'm going, I'm not saying anything because I knew it was areas that's outside of play. That's why it actually got missed. That's why it fell through the cracks. But it was caught by the localization team. So, yeah, he stomped off to, like, not yell at somebody, but, give him his... this is not approved. I don't want this, changed. And I'm thinking, okay, it's a good time for me to go to lunch right about now. I never told him about it, too. Like,
are you
to this day, he doesn't know. I let him go.
That is awesome.
I love that, John. That's amazing.
Yeah, we just made some dungeons around. And those were, again, we had more content than we knew what. There were whole zones, like the Swamp of Sorrows, that just got... Other than that's the one, or is it? What's the marsh outside of Anixia?
Dustswallow.
Dustswallow. Yeah, where there is just no there's few quests.
Very few.
It's just the same 2 monsters in the entire zone, and it's because we know that people are leveling elsewhere, and there's no items to give people that'll be meaningful that aren't better elsewhere. So. There are just so many areas where we realize that, and that's kind of funny. Rob Porteau, he sped up the leveling curve at the very last 6 months of the project. He's like, guys, let's make this a little bit more accessible to people. And to his credit, he had his finger on the pulse of the casual player. Yeah. And he did that, but the problem is that now we have tons of content that there's no reason to go to because you're going to hit 60, and there's only that trinket's only going to be so good that you can't just keep making it better and better because what happens when you hit 61? Is it going to be better than that tier 9 thing that you get on level 60? So we had that problem to deal with it as well. So that's kind of why all those micro dungeons outside of, and they were unfinished, definitely unfinished areas, and just a mistake that they were ever added into game in the first place. Melderon, you told me, was there another question?
The Deep Run Tram. I was just wondering if you
the Deep Run Tram.
If you remember who made it, maybe.
Oh yeah, that was Aaron and Aaron and I were office mates, and they just wanted some connection between Ironforge and Stormwind because it turns out people did not like flying there over and over and over and over again. And so we were thinking, well, the Deep Run Tram is a quick way to, a band-aid for this pain point. But I don't think I ever used the tram. It was just proved to be too hard to get to. I don't actually know where it goes in. Was it Stormwind?
It's in Stormwind, the Old Town kind of. Yeah, and then it connects.
I honestly don't even remember. I don't think I've ever been down there, but I remember Aaron faking an underwater section just because. Hey. We can do this. Why not? There's no underwater between Stormwind and Ironforge, but let's just add it anyway because it's fun. And that's basically an elevator. That's a horizontal elevator. So it's kind of like, I think it had to be different from the vehicles. Because I don't know, maybe it was a vehicle. At one point, it was an elevator, and we knew we could only go in one direction. We could go up and down, but we actually could only do it. We couldn't do it on a spline because we didn't have splines at the time, and we didn't know how granular or accurate that spline would be. So that's actually why we didn't want the tram to be clipping into the sides of the tunnel as we're trying to get that along a curve. So that's why it was a straight shot. But yeah, it's just, that's an easy thing to do, a whole bunch of copying and pasting.
I used to love telling people about WoW, saying they had a subway system. I think the Deep Run Tram did a lot for the game, just giving that public transit vibe was so huge. But the bigger question I was going to ask you is, if you had to point your finger at one person, do you have an opinion on who had the biggest impact on Vanilla WoW? Like, I know Metzen gets brought up a lot, and a lot of us love him as well. Or you really think it was truly just 100% collaborative effort? Is anyone that really stuck out in your mind who just carried the torch immensely.
I was pretty connected to a lot of the team. There was a core group of us who had an enormous impact on the team. I was one of them. I will say that probably he doesn't get a lot of credit, but Mark Kern hired probably the very best programming team ever assembled for a computer game. Like literally every single one of those guys would have been a tech lead on another project. They were just the right people to get. And the thing is that it sounds like an easy thing to say, but and John Cash takes a lot of credit for being able to interview. It's hard to hire a programmer because you can't really just look at their code, and you can't really rely on one of your programmers to look at the code unless that programmer is 100% solid, like John Cash. Like, you can give them tests and find out whether or not they're, smart, are they good with math, but unless you have a really good, capable, and Mark also programs, but he's not obviously at that level. But you just have to know how long things take. Like, you have an idea of how long pathing takes and stuff like that. But he just assembled such a difficult, incredibly technical. Like, finding someone who did to do a server stuff, like Joe Rumsey was probably another one, was crucial. Scott Harton, probably for the engine. He built the engine that was way better than all the other engines at the time to run, especially on low-end systems. And Rumsey, you needed to have the right art directors. There's a lot of people. I mean, it would be like 12 people that you needed to be all-time superstars of, the industry to actually work on that. But if I pick one, and Mark's easy because he was also the team lead, so it's easy. I'll take a cop out on that one. Just pick the team lead.
I mean, it's amazing. It seems like you guys really assembled the dream team. We heard the same thing coming out of Kevin Jordan weeks ago.
It really was. It really was. Yeah.
How do you feel being part of that team that made the greatest MMO of all time?
Greatest game of all time, honestly.
Must be a special feeling.
Oh yeah, it's a special feeling, and it's kind of funny. Like, if you ask any level designer what's their favorite dungeon, it's the one that they're working on. And it's special to have worked on World of Warcraft, but once you've done it, you're more enamored with the thing that you're working on right now. Like, you just forget about it. Like, it's and again, I've talked about World of Warcraft at lunchtime for 10 years straight. Like, I've been in the waiters when they're talking about their character. It's just, you've been through, once you've seen that for a while, it kind of gets like, it's just like any other thing. It's like, when I used to work at Taco Bell, it has that same memory. Like, my first job was at Taco Bell. I worked at Taco Bell for a year, and all the memories of working at Taco Bell, I feel the exact same way about working on World of Warcraft. They're fond memories of doing something with a group of people.
Maybe we could talk about kind of what else you're up to, John. I mean, like, you're not just, I think, like, you're known for this, right? But you're involved in a lot of different things now.
Right.
Maybe we could talk about your authorship and what you've been doing with that.
Right. So I wrote the WoW Diary because I started. I lost the use. My hands have an issue where I can't do a lot of repetitive stuff, so I can't actually play games anymore. And so I was kind of like, I aged out of the industry. And so I write now. I write at my pace is 5 words per minute is the pace that I write at. But I've been writing a bunch of novels, RPG fiction, and I'm going to have about 3 or 4 books in 2021 that I'm going to be pretty excited that when they come out. The series is called The Book of Dungeons. So it's going to be a story based in a role-playing game of players getting together and it's a futuristic MMO, and they've got to do, I'm not going to spoil it too much, but it's a battle royale type of situation. But it's the story of them playing the game as their characters start from level 1 to level, whatever. And that is actually based on a board game that I've been working on for the past 2 years, steadily, that I think is going to solve a lot of problems with board games that have dungeons in them. I'm like, if you go to Board Game Geek, the number one dungeons are, is it Frosthaven now? Even though that nobody has even played Frosthaven, the desire to play a really tactically challenging boss fight, I think it's out there, but nobody's really nailed it. There's a lot of problems with the current games that are trying to do that, and I think I've solved some of those problems, and I've made it very simple version. Got it playable, and now I'm gonna base that on the book series that I'm making now. So when the books are done, then the game comes out.
And whenitsready.com is basically your hub for all this, right? When things get released, that's where you
pretty
post
much,
it.
Yeah.
So whenitsready.com, guys, that's where you want to check out. Make sure you bookmark that page.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing, man. I can't wait to have a look at your books and the board game. I knew you were working on board game. I personally really like playing those. So I hope if it comes out in Europe, I definitely buy it.
Yes. Oh no, it'll be a Kickstarter. The board game will be I think it's going to be pretty cool. I think it's the gist of it is I'm going to make it open license so people can make their own content, and part of it is going to be, because the cool thing is like when I was making dungeons on WoW, the coolest part was the 1 hour concept meeting for scripting the dungeon fights. And just to come up with a dungeon fight, it takes like 5-10 seconds or 10 minutes of spitballing really cool ideas. You get super cool, ideas, and then 6 months later, it's playable. But when you're in a board game environment, you don't have to wait 6 months. You can immediately start playing it. And that's what I want to try to put in the hands of other people and see what they come up with. So.
Awesome.
Wow. I can't, I gotta say, you guys, and I think, I always say you guys captured like lightning in a bottle, magic in a bottle back then. And I think you guys just have such a creative mind and such an imaginative mind that I'm really interested in just seeing what you're going to do with this, John, because, it's, at the end of the day, you, the rest of the guys on the team, created something that was just, I think will go down for a long time. Yeah. Is going to be the best video game that was ever created. And to be able to see something else that one of those minds created too, I think is just an amazing opportunity. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah,
for sure.
I'm thinking that maybe we can do a few.
On this one.
No, we'll make sure we'll help you along the way.
Suck.
No, I don't.
But I was thinking, Kargoz, if we have time, maybe we should do a couple questions from the audience.
Sure.
Maybe some rapid fire questions.
If you guys really try to make them count, guys. There's one question right off the bat. I think probably 4 or 5 people have asked us about this. Does anything come to mind when I say old Iron Forge? People are wondering why it wasn't included as an area you can go to.
Right. Again, just didn't need the content. We had the concept. The stockades were they were okay. We just, again, the leveling curve was so much faster than what we thought it was going to be. We just didn't need these. Now we kind of shipped vanilla without a lot of mid dungeons, middle. Between, I think, the 40s, it was kind of hard to find a dungeon. We just didn't finish them, and we shipped them way later. But, yeah, we just didn't need smaller dungeons.
Okay, we have a question from Morgan Freeman. I'm guessing this is not the real Morgan Freeman, John. I don't want to sadden you too much, but
I believe what I hear. I believe what I hear.
Okay, so Morgan Freeman says,
I loved him in 7. Yeah.
What are your views on streamers and MMOs? Does it take away from the immersion, or are they perfect games for streaming? MMOs. Yeah.
Oh, no. I think streaming's awesome. No, I think it's great. Like, we realized, like, we were super paranoid. That's why we had test servers out there. We tried to do Molten Core, where we weren't going to release anything because we didn't want to spoil any of the secrets. And, once we release it, then the Uber Guild gets it. There's a race. You've literally just dangled the meat out. You've waved the flag, and all of the guilds out there want to be the first to put on the strats online. So nobody wants to figure out the fights. They just want to know how to do it.
Right.
Figuring out is so painful. But no, it's we realize that there's no joy in hiding things. Like, spoilers are just. It just comes with the territory.
Another question is, does John still keep in contact with the original team he worked with? Maybe more specifically Team 2? Or, it seems like you guys are all over the place now.
Yeah, mostly on Facebook. Like, from time to time, like, I'll get... I've basically heard from over half of them about, stuff like, I'll send a free copy of the book to them, signed it for them, personalized copy. And no, they're we keep in touch. I mean, them, like, I'm in Ohio now, so we're kind of, like, obviously disconnected, but like, as soon as we talk or chat or send messages, it's like we're sitting at the hallway conference table, just waiting for the servers to compile. We're just, talking away like it's just the good old days, like it's 2004.
That's awesome. Dave asked a question, and I wanted to kind of expand on it a little bit. So what are your thoughts on the expanded areas of RFC and in Siege of Orgrimmar? So also on that, in Cataclysm, when they revamped a lot of these zones, what were your thoughts on that and as well?
I don't actually know about the expansion in. I was there when they developed. I remember seeing the. I never played through it. I actually stopped playing at Cataclysm. I didn't actually like the black. The color black was something that we kept out of World of Warcraft. A lot of we wanted it to be super colorful. I can see the reason. There was a lot of reasons why to. Throw a lava section in the Barrens and all the other, but it changes the flavor of the zone. And like, once I've fallen in love, once I've bought into the I just don't like seeing it. It's not just changed, but changed in a different, like, conceptually changed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, I'm the guy that rubbled out Stormwind, okay? Like, I'm the guy. I am the guy.
Wait, you designed Stormwind?
No. Like, I made it flyable and I rubbled it out, and I did the back, kind of like the redo of Stormwind.
Oh, the hardware and all that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But also, Deathwing rubbled out, like, one of the sections.
Yeah.
Like, we had some really unpopular sections in Stormwind, and those were the ones that got nuked. What do you know? So that's I'm the guy, but like, I just don't like, and I wasn't protesting at the time. At the time while I worked on it, I didn't mind doing it. I thought it was going to be popular, but then when I sat down as a player, I'm like, oh, this stinks. I don't like this. I want Stormwind to be the way it was, and I want the Barrens to be the way it was, and so forth. So, who knew? Like, and I'm sure all the developers had the exact same reaction when they sat down as players. They said, oh, this isn't as good as we thought it was going to be. And that's just, you have to have the freedom to make mistakes sometimes, and sometimes your mistakes, they're going to be public. Sometimes they're so big that they're actually going to be public. Blizzard's usually pretty good at hiding their mistakes. And they make a lot of them. That's what that book's about.
Right.
Another quick question coming out. I don't know if you remember anything with regard to this, but Dakio asks, what was the zone east of Burning Steppes originally planned for in vanilla?
East.
Oh
Or east.
boy,
There's
my geography is not.
Hold on,
that
I need to look
good.
at the map now.
We did
Maybe I can
have
pull it up.
holes in the map. Like we had Hyjal was going to be a map or going to be a zone in shipping vanilla that we just realized no, we don't need to do Hyjal. This is we there's a northeast of the Plague Lands. There's a zone. Gosh, I forget what that zone is. That's I think where the Blood Elves are.
Oh, Eversong
Oh,
Wood.
Eversong.
Yeah. So we had all these things like we didn't mind having holes in our map because we knew we're going to have expansions. And rather than making the world just bigger and bigger and bigger, it's kind of good to actually just revisit. And so that way, you see some of the old content and it's not completely fallow for years, gives it new life.
So if you're looking at the YouTube stream right now, Kargoz put up a picture, John. It's like this little zone that's kind of in between Badlands, Red Ridge Mountains, and Burning Steppes. It's not Twilight Highlands, right? That's more north, right? So I don't know what that is.
That could just be that one of the zones was too big, and we just walled it in. And that happens. Yeah, like when we realize that, you can have zones that are just too big, we just say, well, tough, we'll just fill it in with filler. And that's just kind of the way it works.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Another question was Blackrock Mountain designed to be around PvP? Did you expect it to be a big PvP hotspot?
No.
No?
Not at all.
Okay.
I mean, I know you can mind control people into the lava, like that's the big grief move. That's kind of like the fun thing in at least classic WoW. But yeah, I didn't think it was. I don't remember it being I played on a PvP server, and I don't think like a couple times it happened, and it was a real mean thing to do. So not a lot of people did it, but it wasn't it was no South Shore. I mean, it was not Tyron Mill. I mean, that's a PvP zone.
Oh yeah, right. They designed that one from the ground up for that.
No, it just happened. That just like in Hillsbrad, the Battle of Hillsbrad. It's just spontaneous, and the only reason is because you had graveyards that were very close together. That's the only reason why
they did an event
there.
for it later, right? But like
later
see.
the team embraces it because it's already become a meme. But that's just totally the players taking control, and that's kind of like having just a rough idea. You kind of outline the ideas because players, they make some decisions that you just got to go along and follow with. We never had plans for an auction house. That was just the players forced that to happen by, we can't stop them from having their own private auction houses through apps or the add-ons. So
another question is, why do you think all the old guard left Blizzard? Was it just a time, people once they advance their careers eventually get sick of WoW and move on, or was there some kind of cataclysmic event that triggered it, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's probably more the former. Just people got sick of making an MMO is just not fun. Like it's just not fun at all, and you just want to do something else. And again, like the artists especially, they're not into MMOs. Like, can you imagine working on art for 4 years and not seeing it in game just because that's not the game for you? Like, I don't want to spend 40 hours of my week every week to play this game so that I can see the art that I'm making, like if I'm making armor sets or whatever. So it's like you really got to want it to be on an MMO. And there was really not many MMOs like that. Before WoW, it was not the popular genre. It was like first-person shooters and jumpers, and console games were more popular. Still are popular, and there was a point where, like, this was in the news, there were layoffs that were not popular. Blizzard has a periodic round of layoffs where they take 10% of the team and cut him loose.
Oh wow.
And that wasn't. But they've done that. They've done that several times in the past, and they're doing that because of Blizzard North had gone all the way through. Well, before they were dissolved, they had never had a single firing at Blizzard North. Not a single.
Wow.
one.
Wow.
And that's any game, any company that goes from mom and pop to a family of 75 people, they're going to have people who are managers that they want to be friends with everybody. Sometimes it's a healthy thing to have firings and layoffs. Unfortunately, Blizzard is so, and actually all companies do this. They have regular layoffs, but the problem with Blizzard doing is that they're so particular with hiring. They're so careful with hiring. You're actually not always cutting deadwood. You're actually getting rid of people who are really, really good, and it's not popular with a lot of the teams. So it's kind of like the old the Roman decimation. Is the least popular punishment. Is losing a tenth of your legion.
Makes sense.
So that's kind of how it's. I don't know if it's the same mentality, but it has the same effect. It made a lot of people unhappy, and mostly that's a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." But honestly, it's working on an MMO for that long is really tiring.
Yeah, I imagine.
It's really tiring when you want to do something else.
All right, you guys have any? Want to do one more question? Defcamp, Dunedain, Melderon, pick one from the chat.
Let's see.
Oh, actually, I might have one myself.
Okay.
Okay.
Couple small questions. First of all, do you have any contact with the current WoW team, like Ian Hazacostas or any one of those guys?
No, I've no contact with any of the New Guard. No. Like I am, and it's purposeful because like Blizzard people, like once they see when there's a social gathering, the Blizzard people have to be careful to not have non-Blizzard people there, because when you start blabbing out like, oh, we canceled this project, and you're like, what project was that? When you're not part of the Blizzard family, you want people to be relaxed. So it's in, any high top secret organization, works the same way. It's if you let your guard down, then you end up causing a lot of pain for the people that work for you. So they kind of tend to stick together.
Now you say that about the secret project. Do you know anything about Project Titan, and did you work on that maybe?
I did work on Titan. I worked on it for 1 year. I didn't think it was going to, like when they introduced it, I remember years before I joined, I said, this thing's never going to happen. There's no way, it's too ambitious. And I don't want to get into the specifics of it because that's a story I think that Blizzard should tell. I think a company should be able to hide their mistakes as well as they can. And it's less pain for their employees for me to be blabbing about the ridiculous things that I thought weren't going to work. I think it's not really my place to do that. I think that's still something they own. That they I don't want to own it. They can own it.
Yeah.
But I was with the project for the year. I actually got fired from it because it was I was unhappy and I wasn't going the way the rest of the team was going. And it was a weight off of my shoulders. I mean, it was a gilded cage, basically. I didn't want to be working there, but it's Blizzard. Where do you go after Blizzard? So I hung around longer than I should have, and they gave me the heave-ho at the right time. So.
Okay, probably last question. And I obviously having the problem with your hands, it's probably not possible. But let's say you didn't have that problem, and Blizzard ask you to come back and work on like the new big MMO project they want to make. Is that something you would like to
Never.
Also,
never.
Not with like the same team, same people, old crew.
It's the job. It's not the people. I mean, it could be new people. I'd work with new people. It's the work is it's too hard. And like I vowed, like every single person on the original dev team, we each vowed that we would never work on an MMO ever again.
Wow.
It was
That
that
is
hard.
so
Oh no,
crazy.
this was before WoW even shipped. And the only reason why Titan started is that Rob Pardo, he kind of was, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was the real EverQuest. Like he had a vision of making the Warcraft, but he was the team lead on Warcraft 3, and that project was bogged down. So this other upstart dev team just out of the blue comes up and they take that, you know, thing. So Titan was going to be Rob's MMO, okay? And so grudgingly, a few people, you know, like maybe some people had forgotten how hard it was to make an MMO, but I didn't think it was going to work, but I went over anyway, and after the first week I was there, it's like, guys, this ain't going to work. This is, and I was not like, I wasn't lifting the team pretty much for, I was kind of like a downer to work with. But
that is incredible. You said everybody was in that same consensus that you would never work on one again. It's almost like to create something so special, it has to be really painful, you know, to make that to the point where, you know, people get traumatized in the process of making it because it's so painful, but it, you know, and shortens your lifespan or something. But it just, you create something so special in the as a result.
I mean, I would have to be at the point where I want to rip somebody off, to knowing that their game isn't going to ship, being that irresponsible. I really do believe that it's so hard to make an MMO. It's like to make a game that you can just play for days and days and days. It's too much. It's just too much. And how are you gonna compete with WoW? Like that's the first question. That's the first thing. How are you going to even like, even though players, yeah, like in content, in flavor, I mean, lore. I mean, I wouldn't want to make a science fiction MMO where you're shooting somebody at a distance. I want to get in close quarters with someone, and this is why Blizzard decided to go with fantasy. Is like I have to be in close quarters to take a swing at somebody, and there's more flavor seeing their face and hearing them growl and stuff. Like when they're at a distance, you know, you just don't get that visceral feeling of, you know, shooting somebody.
Right.
And, you know, spy stuff, it just doesn't have, even the shooters, they just don't have the flavor of fantasy. So I just, it's too hard. Sorry, it's too hard.
No, I mean, you guys put a
hear.
lot of work, and it's just amazing. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
you very
I just
much.
want to thank you,
good to hear it,
John,
yeah.
for
Well,
everything that you did, man.
On behalf of
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
who worked on it, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was a journey that you know was a part of your life, and now it's a part of our lives, and I think that's the most important thing. Whether you go back or not, or whether you know you that was a huge chapter of your life. I'd say, you know, when you look at the chapter, the book of your life, you know, that's a big chapter, and it's for us, it's the same because of you. So thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was an opportunity to me, honestly. I mean, I got lucky. It was the first job I had in the gaming industry. It's not something that I was just, the only thing I was smart enough to know that, oh, this is an opportunity to actually, you just jam out some really cool stuff. I'll take credit for that, but everything else is just, you know, there's 80 people who made that game. So.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. What'd you have to say, Def?
Oh, I want to let John put out his. Let's
plug John's also. We already talked about John, but please, like, give a full breadth of where we can find your stuff. Like,
yes,
everything.
please,
Oh yeah. So if you want to check out any of these articles before you buy my book, because you're going to buy my book after you read these articles.
You have to.
Just check out whenitsready.com. There's a bar. Just click on it. Again, there's no ads. You don't have to sign up for anything. Just check out the articles. There's some really cool stuff on post-vanilla development. And if you want to buy the book, it's on Amazon in Kindle and the WoW Diary. You can order it there too, but Amazon's usually easier for everybody.
And to be honest, I haven't read a book in a while, And I actually bought this and downloaded it this morning. It's so good, guys. I would never leave
it's
you astray,
amazing.
people.
Yeah.
You need to buy this like right after this. Like you'll read the book. You'll read a book for the first time in years.
You can buy it on Kindle. You can buy a hard copy.
I
We were
got
lucky enough to get a hard
iPad.
copy. Thank you, John, so much. But even if you're not like a book reader, I gotta say, guys, this is something that if you have any interest in WoW or games, anything, this is like a must read. It's
Yeah.
looking into the mind of a classic WoW developer. I mean, it's like there's nothing like it. So
Right.
If you're watching this podcast, you obviously spend a lot of time in classic WoW, and then or any WoW, like then you owe yourself to read this book.
seriously,
Couldn't agree more.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah. So real quick, also, I just wanted to apologize. I've been having some technical issues, so my stream has been I haven't been able to stream like the last couple of days, but gonna get it fixed tonight, hopefully. We have a little bit of an announcement that this Saturday, Josh Corbett from Countdown to Classic is going to be putting together an epic game of Among Us. It'll be Ale. He's in chat right now. Ale, Nano, Will E, North, myself and Melderon, Mad Season, the original WoW developer from Vanilla, Kevin Jordan, Classic WoW senior designer Orlando, and Classic WoW developer Omar Gonzalez are going to be there this Saturday at about 10 p.m. So if you want to come check that out, I'll be putting a link where you can check that out on Saturday.
Damn, that's a motley crew right there.
Yeah.
That's great. Wow.
So yeah. So,
Guys,
Yes.
can we get a round of
I
applause
never
for
played this game, so yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Can we get a round of applause for John, man? Can you follow this man? Twitter too. What's your handle on Twitter, John?
Oh, jeez. I think
It's at John. Hold on, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. 1 second.
Put it
yeah.
in the chat,
Let's
Melderon,
see. We are going to say
1 second. So I'll put it in chat. I'll put it at least in YouTube chat.
at
It's
John Staats _
WIR.
Yeah,
Yeah.
JOHNSTAATS _
There it is.
for when it's ready.
There it is. Thanks,
Yeah,
Melderon.
there it is.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everybody watching this, we spent thousands of hours of our life playing this beautiful game, that they made.
Yeah,
And
thanks for playing.
for real. I mean, it's brought us all together. Everyone you're looking at right here, man. I struggle to
Cool.
find the words, but thanks again.
Right on.
So that's it for this week's episode, guys. Any final parting words, Melderon and Dunedain?
Thank you. That's
Yeah, thank you.
basically it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks
Thank you
again,
for
guys.
thank you for coming, man. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
No problem.
We'll catch you next time, everyone. Be sure to buy that book. Take care.
Yes.
Buy it.
See you guys.